Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, October 31st, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Daniel Nichanian, editor-in-chief and founder of Bolt magazine, will be here to tell us about abortion, voting rights, key state races that are only 1 week away. Also on the program today, Israel rejects a ceasefire as Israeli troops fight Hamas in northern Gaza. Over 1 million civilians displaced and over 8,500, mostly women and children, killed since the Hamas terror attack. In West Bank, illegal settlers continue to attack Palestinians. Death toll is over 100 in the West Bank. Meanwhile, in Washington, Johnson introduces a standalone Israel aid package, which cuts funding for the IRS, of course. Senate, fortunately, has other ideas. Meanwhile, speaking of Mike Johnson, Mike Johnson's wife just had to take down her website comparing gay people to bestialists.
Good.
Throwback.
Fun.
UAW's tentative agreement with GM allows for joint venture unionizing. All those joint ventures as they start to develop electric cars. And the Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee are going to be subpoenaing Harlan Crow and Leonard Leo in its Supreme Court ethics investigation. Of course, every member of the Republican members of the Judiciary Committee have received donations from Harlan Crow. In Maine, police were explicitly warned over the danger from that Maine mass shooter months ago. And Elon Musk has lost $25 billion in value in Twitter in 12 months, or has it been more? All this and more. And on the Hill, Anthony Blinken testifying in front of Congress.
About Israel, yeah. We'll be monitoring that.
All this and more on today's program. Someone's saying we have a sound issue with the mic. There's an echo and a buzzing sound. Is that true?
I'm hoping that's not true.
Folks, it is Happy Halloween. Emma Vigland.
Hi.
We have not dressed up.
No.
Nope. Where is she?
Well, I mean, we talked about it, I think, right? We had some ideas, but it's not exactly.
Yeah, we weren't in the mood. Oh, can we pop Emma in? There we go.
I'm looking now. It doesn't seem like we are getting any audio issues from on YouTube, so.
Okay.
Might just be you. Hi, Emmer.
We had contemplated doing the Halloween show. Have we done one since Michael passed? I don't think we have. We were close. But okay, we hear no echoing and buzzing. Thank you. We were close, but the things aren't so festive these days.
I forgot
Too
it
much
was
news.
Halloween.
Too much news.
Sam was like, "It's gonna rain tonight." I'm like, "You got something
not
going
softball.
on?" I literally was like, "He's got a softball game." It's Halloween. Trick
It's
or treating.
Halloween.
Yeah.
Yes.
What is Saul being for Halloween?
You know, he found something that sort of looks like it's like what you would wear if you were hanging out in a a deer stand in the woods hunting, but I don't know what it is. He just likes it because it makes him look like a tree.
Okay.
It's some type
Oh,
of
it's like 3D camo?
yes, sort of.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. And he's walking around with a skull bag, classic 10-year-old. If it's like morbid, it's cool type
Right.
of situation.
I was a ninja around that time, and I wore my ninja costume basically every day for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I'm not going to be surprised if Saul does that. He may wear it a lot. I will update people on how it goes tonight. We're going to have a lot of candy in the office. All right, let's go to this. I mean, we've, obviously a lot of news the past couple of days, things that we haven't paid as much attention to as we would on other days. This UAW, and again, tentative agreements now with Ford, Stellantis, and GM. This, on its face, seemed like a huge, huge win for this particular union and unionism in general. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking to Jane McAlevey more specifically about this. But here is UAW President Shawn Fain, who incidentally took, you'll recall at the beginning of this strike, as he rolled out this strategy of these rolling strikes, or these sort of like, narrowly target strikes that would expand. He took a lot of grief, in terms of strategy, or I guess tactics there. And it really seems to have paid dividends.
It was very strategic in that the plants they were targeting also were a result of, like, if certain sections were showing progress in negotiations, they would hold off there and they would strike the ones that were being more recalcitrant. And then the final thing that put it over the edge was they struck, I believe it was the biggest, I forget which big three automaker it was, but in Arlington, Texas, that was the biggest one. And that's, I think, what put it over the hump here.
But here is Shawn Fain on his Facebook Live to UAW workers yesterday.
Contract demonstrates the incredible power that workers have when they are not afraid to use it. This is why your national negotiators, the UAW Ford National Council, Vice President Browning, and myself wholeheartedly endorsed this record-breaking agreement. We went to Ford with the goal of not leaving a dime on the table, and we accomplished that. But the choice about what happens next is up to all of you. No matter what you decide, this contract remains a huge victory. For far too long, we were being left behind by an economy that only works for the billionaire class. In the billionaire's economy, working class communities continue to get left behind, plants continue to close, families continue to struggle, while the CEOs and the wealthy pocket every last dime. This contract is about more than just economic gains for auto workers. It's a turning point in the class war that's been raging in this country for the past 40 years. For too long, it's been one-sided, and working class people have been left behind. That's why this contract is more than just a contract. It's a call to action to workers everywhere to organize and fight for a better life. The auto workers at Ford just won a major battle in the fight for a better world. Billionaires aren't going to save the American dream. Working class people are saving the American dream. The UAW is saving the American dream, and we are doing it together. Thank you and good night.
Good stuff.
Very exciting. I mean, good to have some good news. And I think from what I was reading too, what's amazing about this is that the UAW was so strong in its defense of the lower tier of workers who were just consistently their benefits being cut into, and the temp workers who were not being paid anywhere close to some sort of livable wage. The solidarity that the UAW had with those temporary workers and with full-time ones allowed for massive wage increases for everybody across the board. That's part of the historic nature of it too.
And you're taking younger people last in, essentially, and showing them the power of union from day one, or maybe not necessarily day one, but early into their careers.
And
I mean, they called the shot too.
Divide and conquer.
Well, they divided and conquered the big three by like you said, that basically flexible strategy that allowed them to say give in and not strike in one place what they're given, where the automakers give in concessions and ramp up strikes at the other ones, and they called their shot and they got it. And it's great.
Again, we're going to talk more details with Jane McAlevey. One of the other things too, and I'm not sure if it's for all three of the car makers or just this came in GM, but the contract's going to expire on May Day, I think 4 years out. And it's just a nice touch in the event that there was a,
well, they're going to target Tesla.
Solidarity.
They've said that they're going to target Tesla. There's UAW organizing committee at that plant in California, where 20,000 workers in Fremont work. Was that the same plant that was subjected to the racial discrimination lawsuit?
I have to check, but I believe it was.
I believe so too, but not fully confirmed. And then there are other automakers that just don't use union labor in the United States, like Toyota. They have non-union U.S. plants. Volkswagen, non-union U.S. plants. I think Mercedes too. This is a way to start to bring other people into the fold, not just workers at the big three, but workers at the other automakers where there's U.S. production.
And also, I think going to be interesting to see how it plays out in regard to one of the things that Biden's going to have a big problem with in Michigan in particular is, you've got that new polling about the reaction to
Arab
Biden's
Americans.
role in sort of unconditional support, or what appears to be unconditional support for Israel's the bombing and invasion of Gaza. One wonders what this does in terms of broadening union support for Democrats who came out very strongly. I mean, you compare and contrast where the Republican presidential candidates were, whether it was Tim Scott or Nikki Haley, or even Trump going to a non-union shop, essentially. Particularly in that, different elements of the UAW. It'll be interesting to see how that impacts, party affiliation and whatnot. But that'll all be part of it as we get a sense of this as that process goes on. We're going to be talking to Jane McAlevey again tomorrow. And in a moment, we're going to talk to Daniel Nichanian. First, a couple words from our sponsors. I've mentioned in the past that, I will buy one or two a week, particularly when I have had the kids in the past, sort of ingredient boxes for dinner meals. And I've tried a couple of different ones. And I think I found the best, HelloFresh. And for me, there are two things that make HelloFresh stand out for me, and I don't know how they pitch it, but for me, the food is great, and I've had similarly, boxes where their recipes are in the sort of same wheelhouse, but with HelloFresh, the portion sizes are perfect. There's never too little or too much. And they have recipes that take 15 to 20 minutes.
Easy.
Sometimes 35, but there's no like extravagant prep and whatnot. Simple stuff, delicious, but not crazy amount of time. I just don't have all that time to do it. And every week they got 40 recipes you can choose from. So it's easy to find something delicious. It's easy to find something, if you're like me, that is, they have like 15-minute, 20-minute, 25, 35, 45. They also have, which I know appeals to someone like Matt, one pot, like one pan meals.
I'll say these things, they teach you how to cook something new that you might not have known before either. And that's what I benefited from it.
Totally.
So this is good for men as well as women, but also men who, maybe haven't.
Need some training wheels.
Maybe a little bit of training wheels, yeah.
Right now, you can go to HelloFresh.com/50majority, 50 majority. Use the code 50majority for 50% off plus free shipping. So super easy to try this out. They've got produce that travels from the farm to your door for peak ripeness, so you can taste it. Like I say, all the ingredients are really super fresh. They're delicious. They come with the easy recipes with pictures on it. But again, the huge thing for me, I've made a sesame soy beef bowl. It sort of reminded me of mapo tofu. I used to work at a Chinese restaurant, and it was like 15 minutes, super easy. I've made one pan Santa Fe tacos, I think it was. Again, 15, 20 minutes. And I'm going to try a big like pork cannellini soup. That's going to take me longer, but who cares? The soup, you can eat it for a long time.
Right.
So you don't need to, I disaggregate all the time, or I depreciate the time, whatever it is. I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Okay.
But the point is, HelloFresh is great, very quick, and also less expensive, certainly, than takein, and even buying the groceries yourself. There's no waste. Go to HelloFresh.com/50majority. Use the code 50majority. You're going to get 50% off plus free shipping. Check it out. You will not be disappointed. Also, another sponsor that we have today. What do you call a person who speaks the 3 languages?
Trilingual.
Correct. Someone who speaks 2?
Bilingual.
1?
American.
You nailed it. How did you do?
You've done this ad read before.
I did. Yeah. Well, there you go. I did.
Also, that's kind of a joke about how stupid we are over
it's
here.
ridiculous. Only 22% of Americans speak a language other than English at home. Starting a new language this fall, and you can be the exception, not the rule. And how do you do it? Babbel. They'll have you speaking a new language in just 3 weeks. With Babbel, it's so easy to pick up on how to order food, ask for directions, speak to merchants, and you're not going to have to consult the language app while on vacation, etc. It's just also a great introduction and a great way to get your foot in the door and give yourself some confidence.
And good for your brain to teach yourself new things like that.
Huge. And instead of paying hundreds of dollars for a private tutor or fooling yourself with language apps that are little more than games, Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are designed by over 150 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Babbel's designed by real people for real conversations. All of Babbel's tips and tools for learning a new language are approachable, they're accessible, and they are rooted in real-life situations delivered with conversation-based teaching. And now they've got a special right now, limited time only, for our listeners to get you started right now. You get 55% off your Babbel subscription. Only for our listeners at babbel.com/majority. That's 55% off at babbel.com/majority, spelled BABBEL.com/majority. Rules and restrictions may apply. We'll put a link to both those sponsors in the podcast and YouTube descriptions. All right, going to take a quick break. When we come back, Daniel Nichanian, editor-in-chief and founder of Bolts Magazine, on some really important elections that are coming up in a week from now that you should be paying attention to. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigland on the Majority Report. Want to welcome back to the program Daniel Nichanian, editor-in-chief and founder of Bolts Magazine. And folks, if you ever need a cheat sheet for really midterm elections, off-year elections, general elections, go to Bolt Magazine, find Daniel on Twitter. Nobody does a more comprehensive overview of these elections than Daniel. Daniel, thanks so much for joining us.
Or
Thanks for having me.
On Twitter, right? That's how people can find you.
Yes,
Daniel.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
So, all right, let's start with Ohio. I think last time we spoke to you, it was either in the run-up to or the wake of question, I think it was number 1, which was an attempt to sort of undermine this constitutional amendment in Ohio that's coming up in a week from now. Would just remind us of what that was about, and then we can talk about what's happening a week from today.
That's a great place to start, because when I keep mentioning to people that there's an abortion rights referendum on the ballot in Ohio, I keep hearing, wasn't that already taken care of over the summer? And I think there's been some confusion because of how much attention that referendum got. So what actually happened in, throughout 2023, in the aftermath of Dobbs, is that progressive organizers in Ohio wanted to put a ballot measure on the ballot to codify abortion rights. And Republicans tried to speed a change to the entire process of how you pass a referendum in Ohio, to undermine the abortion rights referendum. So there was a kind of a prequel in August where Republicans proposed raising the threshold to pass a constitutional amendment at the polls from 50% to 60%, which would obviously make it much more difficult to pass an abortion rights referendum. Also, all sorts of other measures that could be on the ballot in coming years. So that actually, there was a very high turnout in August for a special election in an off year. There was already a remarkable sign of engagement. That ballot measure lost by a big margin, because people don't often like to undercut their own power, respectively what's being asked of them. So now there is the main event is actually in a week, which is the vote to actually enshrine abortion rights in the state constitution. And
is there a sense of what's going to happen in that election? I mean, I know if what happened over the summer was a leading indicator, it looks pretty good, but there's this confusion. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, so polling indicates that that the issue 1, which is the next week's vote, is in the lead. Republicans seem to not have given up the way we've seen them give up in other abortion referendums. I think what's just really important in next week's election is that we've seen a lot of referendums around abortion rights since Dobbs in states that already had abortion legalized. California had an abortion referendum. Vermont had an abortion referendum. Kansas had sort of an abortion referendum, but all those states already had abortion rights. I think what's very important in Ohio, not necessarily the first time, but it's a state with an abortion ban that's probably looming if this falls. People are really stepping in, and they're really going to change the availability of abortion access going forward if this passes. So that's why it's feeling like a big deal. It is a big deal. It's going to affect a ton of people, and Republicans are sort of trying right now to say, the governor, I think a few days ago, said if you vote against abortion rights next week, we'll soften the ban that we have planned and things like that, sort of convince people it won't be as extreme. But obviously the ban, there's a 6-week ban that's sort of in court right now that's there, and that's really the horizon that Ohio is.
I like the idea of Republicans saying, just trust us on abortion. Just trust us. It won't be as extreme. We won't, which is, I think there's a general understanding in the public that you can't trust what they say on this because even on the federal level, after, Dobbs, Lindsey Graham introduced a federal restriction on abortion, one saying it was left to the states. Putting that aside for a second, though, I'm reminded of how contentious the language of the referendum was and the battle over that. What should voters look out for if they're going to the ballot box, and they should be, in Ohio next week, about what the misleading language could indicate and what they should be checking off if they want to protect abortion rights?
Yeah, so there was a lengthy back and forth between the Secretary of State's office, election officials, and people who supported the referendum on what ballot language was going to be used, because I think it was the Secretary of State's office. Now there's a slight hesitation as to whether they were the ones responsible for the ballot language, but they were writing a version of it that was sort of biased, so using some Republican messaging about the content of the referendum, proponents of the referendum just want a clear sense that the yes on issue 1 is to protect abortion access. A complicating factor, Emma, that maybe also gets to another form of confusion is that the August referendum was also named issue 1. And there's some signs that Republicans purposefully labeled this new one issue 1 as well, because there were all these signage in August and July from the left saying vote no on issue 1, and now the positions have been inverted. And if you're for abortion rights, you should have voted no in August, and yes now to the same number issue. And obviously that's not great from the perspective of voter education, public information. So people should maybe make sure that they are that they're voting on based on how this coming issue 1 is, and not based on how the one in August was.
So it's yes if you want to protect it.
If you favor abortion access, yes. If you want to keep the status quo and not have abortion in the Constitution, that's no. So that's
understood.
That's the current situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
We should also say that legal marijuana is on the ballot, I think, as well, right? In a week. And I want you to talk about that, but the decision by activists to have these ballot measures this year, as opposed to 2024, what have you done any reporting around that? Because it seems to me it would behoove both those people who want to support abortion and legal weed to have done it in 2024, or maybe not, but it certainly would have helped. I guess, like, Sherrod Brown, maybe, to have those on the ballot next year.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's no question that since Dobbs, Republicans have been put on the defensive on the issue of abortion, and that this, especially in a state like Ohio that has leaned right in recent years, and where Senator Brown is going to be in a difficult spot next year, this is an issue they're gonna try and campaign on. I mean, I think maybe the issue of weed is a bit different on the issue of abortion. We've already seen stories of kids in Ohio having been blocked from access to abortion in 2022. And I think also importantly, we've seen how Republicans have tried to game the referendum process in the spring of 2023. They sort of rushed that referendum because it's all they could have done. We're seeing so many bills around the country trying to make it more hard to do initiatives. Now we're seeing, that we could have a whole call where I just list all the states where we've seen bills in recent years that have done that. So I think there's kind of a clock ticking for any any efforts by progressives to put these important issues on the ballot. And I think abortion access, given the stakes, is sort of like, I mean, clearly everyone, both for getting it done eventually and just the lives of people affected, I think getting it done the quicker possible was the priority. I don't. Weed, I think, is a different consideration because not that it's not urgent for some people, but maybe a different sort of urgency. Interestingly, there's another initiative already on the horizon, Sam, in Ohio, which people I think would be interested about. It's independent. An independent commission for drawing state lines, I think, or voting rights groups there have already started to work on that to try and put it potentially in 2024 ballot. That's something that also will matter a lot in Ohio, given how the state lines are drawn there to be very, very friendly to the GOP.
So, and is there early voting in Ohio? In other words, can people be voting right now?
Yes, there is early voting in Ohio. Early indications show that there's a lot of people voting. For now, it's sort of hard to compare to the last equivalent election because it's rare to have such an important election on an odd year ballot. But it does indicate, for now, we're seeing similar headlines as we saw in August, which is that people are voting.
Great. All right, let's move to Pennsylvania. I just read that $17 million at least has been spent on the high court, on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court election, which is pretty extraordinary, it seems to me. And I have a feeling that they'll probably be even spending more, a couple million more by this week. What's at stake in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, so there's a Supreme Court election in Pennsylvania. As you said, it's the second of the year only. The first one was in Wisconsin, and I think a lot of people were following that. There's a way in which Wisconsin always attracts more attention on judicial races, but Pennsylvania, for very obvious reasons, anyone should care about Pennsylvania, just if you care about politics federally and nationally. It's a major swing state. One thing that may have blunted the buzz around it up until recently is that the Democrats are sure to keep a majority right now, no matter the result of this election, because the Chief Justice, who's a Democrat, died last year. This is going to fill the Chief Justice's seat. So it's going to be either 5-2 Democratic or 4-3 Democratic, depending on the result. But that doesn't mean that it's not a very, very important election. First, because it could set up, if Republicans gain the seat, it could set up them gaining the seat in a couple of years, which would have very big implications for voting rights and redistricting, especially because this court has been very important for redistricting and helped Democrats gain the U.S. House in 2017 when it struck down a GOP gerrymander. But also, even in the meantime, voting rights in election cases haven't always fallen on party line in Pennsylvania. For instance, there was a ballot, an important ruling a year ago that Democratic side lost that tossed out a lot of mailed ballots during the midterm. So in 2024, we're going to see a lot of lawsuits in Pennsylvania around the election. Unfortunately, that feels like a certainty. It could be of the variety of the more routine variety of whether mail ballots are counted and sorted. But also, if Trump is on the ballot after the election, we know what he tried to do in 2020 and what he could try to do again in 2024. So these seats on the court are just very, very important and attracting a lot of attention. And
there are other races in Pennsylvania that you've been watching too, particularly the policing side.
There's a lot happening in Pennsylvania. I mean, just maybe to stay on the election for a second, which I think a lot of people don't know, that county commissioners in Pennsylvania have immense amount of authority and discretion over how to run elections, whether to have ballot drop boxes, whether to put sheriff's deputies in front of every mail in the drop box, which is done in a few places, which obviously raises questions of civil rights, whether to allow people to fix mistakes on ballot. And I was talking to the head of Common Cause Pennsylvania voting rights group, and he estimates that tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of ballots, mail ballots, are really at stake here in these procedures. And I a lot of people in 11 months I know will be very stressed about who's going to win the election and what's happening at the county level and all of these rules, and there's going to be a lot of agitation. But it's important to know this is really the next 7 days are really where that's at play in all of these big Pennsylvania counties. A lot of them tipped Democratic in the last time there were these elections in 2019, especially in the suburbs, and that really helped Democrats sort of shield themselves from Trump and his lawsuits and his efforts to game the system in 2020. And now those suburban counties like Bucks County and other places are again putting their county commissions and their board of elections at stake. There's also there's even a fake Trump elector who's running for county commission in the Pittsburgh region. And
this is a big deal because Pennsylvania in 2020 was decided by was it 60,000 votes and maybe less in 2016. That's out of like something like 6-7 million voters. So this is a couple of thousand votes here, a couple of thousand votes there make a huge difference in terms of like whose ballots are counted.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question that we're literally going to hear about. I think there's going to, it's sort of, in a year, we're going to hear people wish they had known about, I think, this week's election this week. And then it's going to be late because people are going to be in office. And this kind of, people in Pennsylvania are more concerned even than what I said, because to go back to our previous discussion, the state Supreme Court has issued some rulings since 2020 that have made it a bit harder to get your mail ballot counted and made it a little more likely that they'll be tossed, as I was describing earlier. So that actually has increased the importance of whether the county officials allow you, for instance, to cure your ballot, to fix your ballot. If you forget to put the date on the back of the envelope, even if you've sent it in time, even if it's arrived in time, technically the state has to reject that ballot unless you go and reject it. That seems like potentially a small thing, but we'll be talking about a lot of ballots. And in a tight election, that's the kind of stuff that is very important.
We should also say, we're getting, I am living in Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania, and the school board elections are pretty big there too, particularly with all the Moms for Liberty candidates. I mean, this has been a big push for them to take over these school boards as a way, I guess, of banning books of various ilk and also, just sort of impose some type of like anti-trans agenda in all these places.
Yeah, and it all really comes together. All the things we're talking about. I mentioned Bucks County, for instance, which is a very, very large county in the suburbs of Philly. That's really been the one of the key centers of a school board race there. Actually, Moms for Liberty has already made a lot of progress on the school boards there. There's a few. There've been very negative campaigning there. A Republican operative sent sexually explicit mailers to the household of Republicans to like kind of supposedly show the kind of books that are in schools. That's the kind of thing we're seeing there. That's the same county that was talking about the county as the county commission and election rules. That's the same county where the Republican head of the county is a fake Trump elector from 2020 and remains the head of the party. So all of these different issues in terms of what conservatives are sort of eager to change are all connected.
All right, let's move from Pennsylvania. You had a thread. I mean, there's a general thread, but I thought it was a pretty important one to remind people of in terms of, and particularly at a time where the Supreme Court is pretty iffy on the Voting Rights Act. And it was about Mississippi and the disenfranchisement of folks who have been convicted of a crime and served time in prison. Walk us through this dynamic and what states are really this is becoming this is or continues to be a big issue.
Yeah, no, it's super important. I think, at Bolts we cover elections and what's at stake, what's on the ballot, what people can influence. I think we always try and keep in mind the conditions on which they're voting and how many people are excluded. And our reporter Alex Burness wrote effectively a few stories this fall and summer about the people who are left out of the process this fall, because, we could always run stories like that in the sense that there's people excluded from the process in almost every state when it comes to criminal convictions. But the states that are specifically voting this fall have the most restrictive, the harshest, the most punitive laws in the nation, pretty much. And I think you're referencing to. I'm thinking about Mississippi, Virginia now, and Kentucky. Mississippi, according to estimates, national estimates, has the highest rate of people who can't vote because of a past criminal conviction. And I mean, the estimate is that 11% of adults in Mississippi are barred from voting because of a past criminal conviction, and because Mississippi bars people who are convicted of some felonies for life. So, my colleague Alex talked to someone who served 1 year in prison for theft about 20 years ago, and was released 20 years ago, and still has not been able to vote. So that's sort of just the scope of the situation is so huge that it really kind of makes a mockery of the rest of what's going on. I think what the threat was also calling attention to the racism that this is tied to. Originally, Mississippi's system was designed when they drew a state constitution in 1890, and with the very explicit goal in 1890, it was a bunch of white supremacists came together with the goal of finding ways to not allow Black people to vote in Mississippi. And they actually made a list of offenses in 1890 that they thought Black people would be more likely to be convicted of. And those are the ones that people lost the right for life and to vote to life, and everything else was not disqualifying. So that has been modified to some extent over the years, but the basic racism of the criminal legal system still gets imported in the voting rights arena. So right now, 16% of Black adults cannot vote in Mississippi, which is obviously a staggering rate. And just maybe a quick note, I mentioned Virginia, which I think has this reputation of being more being more democratic than these other states. But the Republican governor there this year ended the policy of automatically restoring the voting rights of people who finish a sentence or who leave prison. So at this moment in Virginia, we're back to a system of losing your right to vote for life for any felony conviction, which is extraordinarily rare by national standards. And the fact that that's happening in Virginia under someone who's tried to build a centrist Republican reputation, I think is very important.
And I think it was McAuliffe had reversed that years ago, and then it's been reinstituted by Youngkin. We should just say, like, I just want to put a finer point on that Mississippi thing, because this is something that we saw in many states in the the former Confederate slave-owning states in the wake of the 15th Amendment, which gave the vote, and you could no longer gave the vote to freed slaves, and you could no longer bar someone from voting based upon race. The name of the game in the wake of Reconstruction was for these states to sort of create a mechanism to, as efficiently as possible, disenfranchise as many Black people, Black men, as possible at that time. And you saw a Supreme Court not terribly dissimilar in disposition to the one that we have now, basically waving that stuff through. And that was sort of law of the land for 70, 75 years until the Voting Rights Act. And now we're sort of, have been rolling that back. But people should understand that's the way it was done. And there was an understanding, I think, at that time, we can't do this, as efficiently as saying we're not going to allow Black people to vote. Because we're not allowed to do that because of the federal Constitution. But if we can come up with a mechanism where if we disenfranchise poor white people, that's okay. But as long as we end up disenfranchising more Black men than white men, we're good. We've picked up some votes. And that's been the strategy for 40 years, essentially, for a lot of these states.
Yeah, I mean, to give you just a sense again of scope in Mississippi, the vast majority of people who have lost the right to vote for life in Mississippi are Black. though even though black people represent about 40% or less of the Mississippi population. So that's really the effect now. What's super interesting is that in August, there was a surprise decision by a federal court that struck down Mississippi's system of barring people to vote for life. And there was this small moment where it looked like things might be changing. And then the full Fifth Circuit of Appeals stepped in, vacated the ruling, and we're back to where we were now. And it's a very long status quo that dates back to this, like, the 19th century we're discussing. But it's interesting that, like, if you're in Mississippi, cannot vote. The person I was describing earlier who lost the right to vote because of a theft conviction 20 years ago, if you're in their shoes, right, there was this brief moment, this brief glimmer of hope that the doors of the franchise have been opened, that has been taken away. So it's just, it is this very long history, but this constant wave of attacks on the right to vote of people on the ground.
Walk us through just some of the key states where the legislature or the power may sway or be locked in. I have a piece that you wrote from early October talking about Louisiana. That door seems to have been shut now. Because the governor, a Republican governor, was elected. And now you have the trifecta, as you were. And even though there's going to be an election for the state houses in next week, they're all but over because of lack of candidates, really.
Yeah. So interestingly, the states that are electing the state government, I just mentioned, because they're the states with these particularly hostile voting laws. So Kentucky, Virginia, Mississippi, as well as New Jersey are the 4 states that are going to be electing their state governments next week. So their governor and or their state house members and state senate members. The 5th state, Louisiana, has been taken care of, as you were saying. The governorship flipped to Republicans, who therefore gained control of the state government for the first time in 8 years. Interestingly, Democrats had already lost for the state house and state senate before a single vote was cast, because they had Republicans who were running unopposed in the majority of districts in both the state house and the state senate. So Republicans had already won the legislature before a single vote was counted, and then they gained the governorship. In the 4 other states I mentioned, the big one everyone's, I think, watching is Virginia. Virginia, which again doesn't have the reputation of being particularly red anymore, but Republicans are very close to winning control of the state government. They just need to pick up a few seats in the state senate. And Republicans have been very explicit that this is going to have big consequences, including on abortion access, if they gain the trifecta in Virginia. So what the Democrats are trying to do there is prevent a Republican trifecta. Sort of the same in Kentucky, where a Democratic governor is seeking a second term. If he loses, it would hand full control of the state government to Republicans. That's kind of their third gain opportunity. Just a level under in importance, just because Republicans already have a veto-proof majority in Kentucky, and the governor, while has powers, is not quite as decisive perhaps for policy. And then Mississippi and New Jersey, interesting states. One is currently all Republican, one is all Democratic, and each party is trying to keep it. Democrats are surprisingly trying to make a big push to gain the governorship in Mississippi. The governor is sort of engulfed in a scandal there, even if the state is Republican. So that's interesting to watch, but that's also why all of the stuff we were saying earlier about who's allowed to vote and not allowed to vote is very important.
This will be the first real election since 2022. I mean, we've had special elections, and Democrats have done quite well in them. But this is going to be the first one that's going to give us a sense of like purple states and how much things like abortion are playing. And we're going to get a wide array of understanding of where the electorate is. Or at least a greater one than we've had since 2022. Yeah,
I think just for the pure question of how things are looking for 2024, I think I would invite people to follow what's happening in Virginia and in Pennsylvania. In Virginia, is the clear sense of Democrats running versus Republicans in a way that's nationally recognizable, and the comparison point to the 2020, 2022 elections and whether things have shifted will be interesting. I think especially because Republicans are surprisingly really running on abortion in Virginia. Like we've seen in 2022 or since then, Republicans try to shy away from their position on restricting abortions. I think we were saying that earlier when we were talking about Ohio, but in Virginia they've been pretty explicit again that there will be restrictions on abortion if they win. They've tried to turn the table and make Democrats look extreme on the issue. That's something we did see in other states last year. It didn't work for Republicans then. So I think that's making a lot of people look at Virginia. And Pennsylvania too. The state Supreme Court race is a statewide election in potentially the biggest swing state in the country. You can't get a better dress rehearsal than that for the 2024 election.
Daniel Nichanian, editor-in-chief, founder of Bolts Magazine. Thanks so much for your time today. We'll put a link to Bolts Magazine and your cheat sheet for next week.
Awesome. It's always fun to talk.
All right. Thanks for coming on. All right, folks. Let's just do a recap a little bit of what's happening. The supposedly in the House, they're going to bring up a bill tomorrow, I think it is. It was introduced by Mike Johnson, who, incidentally, when you talk about running from your past record on abortion or gay people or creationism, he worked at the museum. When we started this version of the show, every week somebody had sent in like a creation museum book.
Oh, yeah.
And every week I would read a page or two from it to teach everybody about how...
Got to hear both sides.
Yeah, I mean...
It's a fair show here, yeah.
There was a lot of, like, who knew that we were... only been around for a couple of thousand years. But they put that... I had a phone call to them years ago when I was on Air America. I would do these, like, sort of... I don't know if I would call them prank phone calls. But... And when they were building that thing, they built it in the exact point in the country, which I think has the highest density of people within a 5-hour drive or something like that, radius. Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, Mike Johnson introducing a bill, a standalone support Israel bill, as opposed to one support Ukraine, and you know, Biden had or Taiwan, and then there were some like domestic things in the bill that were pretty small that I guess were there as some type of sweeteners for people under the idea put out by the White House. Johnson released a standalone Israel aid bill for $14 billion. With a pay for that comes from the IRS, I should say. That was that $80 billion that came in the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. That money to the IRS has already paid huge dividends, both in terms of like expanded auditing of millionaires and in speeding up your returns by the IRS for just average people. Every dollar you spend on the IRS gets you between $5 and $7 return. Mm-hmm. So even if they're doing this to justify from a deficit reduction perspective, which is absurd, but just even using their own logic, it actually increases the deficit, the way that they want to go about paying for it.
And they're fine with that with a Democratic president in office regardless. Anyway.
Oh, yeah, they don't care. I mean, they just, the bottom line is Republicans want to cut the IRS. Yeah. You can look at a graph of IRS audits over the past 15 years, and there is almost a 1-to-1 relationship. Every dollar they cut away from the IRS, the ability of the IRS to audit people with money who come with an army of lawyers and accountants goes down. And so the ratio of audits of low income people and wealthy people changes and favors. It's not totally. I mean, they still audit, even at when the biggest cuts, they still are auditing rich people more than people living, low income people. But that dynamic is a function of how much you fund the IRS. Yeah. And when the IRA was passed, there were people who ostensibly were on the left were talking about the IRS in the exact same way that Republicans do, claiming that the IRS was going to go after more people. There was and I understand skepticism when people say anything, but it was also illogical for the IRS to do this. To do anything but. You had Janet Yellen vow that nobody under $400,000 income was going to see more audits on an annual basis. They were going to audit people getting earned income tax credits less. Those are low-income people basically getting a subsidy from the government. And they were going to pick up auditing wealthy people. And it just simply makes sense. You can't afford the risks associated with going after people who have an army of lawyers and accountants if you're understaffed, and the IRS has been.
Yeah, I would say I'm to the left of Thomas Piketty, but if you read his books, Capital in the 21st Century and Capital and Ideology, it's very clear that just a dispassionate look at the world economy shows that we need not even just domestic tax enforcement, but global tax enforcement to be something that we figure out this century.
And to be clear, without even having to, I don't even have to engage in the arguments as to whether a deficit is a good thing or a bad thing. The purpose of this taxation should be to minimize wealth disparities, which have gone out of control as in part a function of the IRS leaving, billions upon billions of dollars out there that are owed by wealthy people. Also in part of just the way in which we tax. Work is taxed at a higher rate than money is taxed. Money that you make off of your money is taxed less.
We've cut taxes precipitously since for decades at this point. Obama was instrumental in making many of those Bush tax cuts permanent, and then Trump also came in and cut taxes more. And there's no real political will from the Democratic side to increase them in any meaningful way. So that's part of the problem. The bare minimum is the IRS enforcement.
So it is. The long and short of it is this Mike Johnson legislation, it would appear, is going to be dead on arrival in the Senate. For someone like Mitch McConnell, because it doesn't have a Ukraine funding and Taiwan funding. For someone like Schumer, it's because it purports to cut from the IRS to pay for it. So we'll see what happens. I have no idea how this goes forward. I am not terribly worried about this money not being pushed through, to be totally honest, in the short term.
If Mike Johnson wants to be to bog this down, to bog more money down from going to Israel, I could not be more on board with that project. And again, reminder, we are now, I think it's 17 days out from the government shutdown. Johnson has supposedly floated a brief continuing resolution just to get out of this neighborhood, I guess. But I'm unclear when it would go maybe to Christmas. Unsure. We'll have more on that in the coming days. We're going to take a break, head into the fun half. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajority.report.com. When you do, you not only support the free show, but you also get the fun half of the program. And you get the free show free of commercials.
help the show survive and thrive. It is really your support that makes this possible. We're coming up on the 10-year anniversary. I guess it's next year in Brooklyn. That's what I was thinking.
Oh, you guys moving from Manhattan?
Uh-huh. I was thinking about that today. But this show, we're in year 13, I guess, of this show. Right around now. Like right around now. Launched this, I should know that. When we hit 10 years, I was like, yeah, we should have, so it didn't even occur to me.
13? Isn't it older?
The podcast was launched in 2010.
Okay.
The actual show was the first Majority Report was on was a one-off on Tom Sharpling's program in February of 2003.
There we go.
And then this
That's
show,
like the 20-year anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
that would have been the 20-year. Really, April 1st, 2004 will be the 20th anniversary of this as an
That's what I was
ongoing
thinking.
enterprise.
Yeah.
So maybe we should plan something for that. In the meantime, become a member. Maybe we'll
Get
do
Sharpling back on.
Sharpling would have been on March, but yes, we should do
I
that.
don't think he's been on since I've been here.
Has he not?
I don't think, maybe
He was
once.
supposed to come on for his book, and then I just got the runaround from him.
Oh, I
I'm
remember
so
that, yeah.
busy now. Whatever. Folks, just a reminder, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code MAJORITY, get 10% off. Emma.
Yes.
ESPN.
By the way, thank you, Kowalski, for this. I'm trying to bring more coffee from home these days, and this is this mug that he sent to us very nicely, a travel mug. On ESPN yesterday, we spoke about a very busy week 8 ahead of the trade deadline today in the NFL. Burrow being back, baby Purdy's falling apart, Kirk Cousins injury, all that good stuff, and we also touched on the insane right-wing reaction to the death of the American hockey player in the UK. Because a black guy's skate is the one that hit his neck. And so, of course, it's a manslaughter charges, apparently, says the right wing. YouTube.com/ESPN show. Yep. Ian Miles Chong all over that.
God. Yeah, tonight on Left Reckoning, Malika Jabali talking about her book, It's Not You, It's Capitalism, and also in the postgame might be telling some spooky stories. I do not believe in ghosts, but I do have stories of seeing them. So check that out, patreon.com/Left Reckoning if you want to.
What are you talking about?
You've seen a ghost?
I mean, patreon.com/Left Reckoning.
Good business.
Yeah, folks, I'm going to be talking about the ghost that I saw in the fun half.
Spooky happenings.
Oh, boy.
Also, I have a lot of juicy gossip. If you want to hear about it, please wire me $10,000 about all the people in this industry. People want to Venmo me. It's at Emma Vigeland.
646-257-3920 is the number. We'll see you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy.
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Cedar! What a fucking nightmare! Bring back DJ Denner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Denner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males.
Psych. Fuck them. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what? A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. All lives matter.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. It is the fun half. I will turn on the phones in just about 5 minutes or so. 646-257-3920. Not quite yet. Hey, baby, on the IM. Why don't you put that crack pipe down and get my pipe up?
Say, baby, put down that pipe and get my pipe up.
Yep. I basically want to keep that on the board until he dies. Until he passes away.
Oh, yeah.
In a couple years then.
I feel like we could do some sort of compilation of like the most cringy right-wing audiobook moments, including the one of Jordan Peterson dreaming about his grandmother's pubes. That one is pretty rough.
I'm not sure I want to have access to that.
Oh, no?
Yeah, I think I'll probably skip that one.
Well, I'm in the spooky Halloween spirit.
Lick butts, not boots. Wow, no Halloween costume. So disappointing. Revoking my membership. Never mind. I guess it would be pretty distasteful to discuss some of this stuff while in a costume. I mean, look, I think it's just that we're in a bad mood. That's basically, or I'm in a bad mood. Not apparently though, Mike Johnson and his wife have a podcast, which we should be mining for a lot of material.
Yeah, we'll look into that.
Subscribe to that right now.
Bumbler. Haircut. No, not a haircut. I got the haircut like a week and a half ago.
You just have the sides kind of tame today.
I get the sides kind of tame. You know, I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but I've been melting beeswax.
Mm-hmm. To put in your hair?
Mixing it with, different oils. Try it out.
Wow.
Yep.
Sometimes you're a little woo-woo-y, like with that kind of stuff.
Very upstate energy.
It's not woo-woo.
I mean, you don't go like just get hair gel from the store. You're putting beeswax in your hair.
Well, I don't want just hair gel. I mean, because that stuff's got all sorts of chemicals, stuff like that.
Okay,
I'm not gonna do that.
I rest my case.
It's actually much easier than you thought. I just am trying to settle on the one that I like.
You make your own toothpaste too?
No. Although you can do that.
I'm aware. There was a guy on Love is Blind who did that, and found out later he's a Jimmy Dore fan.
Oh, I remember that guy. Truth be told, with Mike and Kelly Johnson. Mike Johnson and Kelly Johnson, licensed pastoral counselor and educator, present thoughtful analysis of hot topics and current events from a Christian perspective and interviews with some of the most influential people. Interesting.
Yeah, we need to be digging that. If you're a listener of this program and you want to go and listen to that and pull quotes for us, please do.
Be volunteer spies for us.
Suna Tulp, what the hell's wrong with the Western world? Well, I wouldn't say just the Western world. Reginald Demslayer, apparently Oliver North on Fox News giving advice to Biden. Interesting. Smooth operator. What's up, y'all? I'm 27. I've never celebrated Halloween since I was raised evangelical. I've outgrown religion, and I was going to dress up and go trick-or-treating for the first time, but now my wife and I have COVID. Shake my head. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I don't know what to do. I wish I had... So, do it when you're 28. Chris Burdick, all you had to do, Sam, is throw on a plaid shirt and say you've dressed as David Dayen. That's pretty good. Jazz Masood, it's called a ghillie suit, Sam. That's what Saul's wearing, I guess. Mom Manola, I wish you all were wearing costumes today. A little levity would help. Anyway, love the show forever. It's very controversial.
Walk in wearing a costume.
Fierce Deity. I know there's far more important things going on, but you guys have any fun? Have clips on the conservative freakout over the Charlottesville Lee statue being melted down instead of being put into a museum? Should we, do we have any of that?
I have the video of the Lee, not the reaction.
Let's see. We'll see if we can find some of that. Tommy DeVito, have you considered Goldberg's entrance at Halloween Havoc 1998 his best entrance ever? I don't know what that refers to.
No idea.
Wrestling.
I don't know anything about
pro
wrestling.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like wrestling fans thinking.
That's for Binder. That's
You're
for
right.
Binder.
Yeah, you need to save that for Thursday.
Yeah.
Tomolo Flink, happy Newsday Tuesday, folks. Here in Britain, a Tory member of Parliament has been fired from his government post because he called for a ceasefire in Gaza. Meanwhile, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson is to become a host on GB News. Also, Em, I hope you were able to stay safe at that rally you went to in terms of not getting arrested. I would go to rallies with my... Oh, wait, I read this yesterday.
Oh.
So I've emailed my member of Parliament twice. Fizzy drinks. Billionaires aren't going to save the American dream. Put that on his statue. I'd say headstone, but that's too morbid. Sam just uses baking soda like every other boomer. Chardonnay socialist. Holy crap. Sean Fain is inspiring indeed. Ryan, can I get a shofar going through COVID for the first time?
Oh.
There's a couple of people getting COVID.
Sorry to hear that.
You know, I was reading that there is some studies that suggest that green tea and black tea, which I guess are from the same plant, are good to inhibit the replication of COVID. I don't
Take that, Brett Weinstein.
I mean, I don't think it's a cure, but I think it can't hurt. That's for sure. Oh, somebody sent a clip of, I meant to send this to you guys. I think Brett Weinstein pontificating over the Israel-Gaza conflict with Sam Harris. It was really...
Was it the Eric one where he said, I got a solution that no one's going to like, which is that we say, here's all the land Palestinians can have as long as you behave. And every day you don't behave, we take some of that land. Was it that one?
I don't think that was it. But it was like the lack of historical understanding, the idea that sort of like Palestinians had been offered their own state is a fabrication. And what's amazing is at this stage too, you really have to curate your media diet to avoid the reality of like knowing that Netanyahu and Sharon were very helpful in undermining the Oslo Accords and everything that followed from that. We have had on Daniel Levy, who was part of the negotiations of the Oslo Accords, who has said that, like, you know, it wasn't designed to... It was almost impossible for the Palestinian leadership to accept that proposal. Again, you can come in and say they were offered 98% of the West Bank, but I've used this example plenty of times before. I mean, the divorce settlement where it's like you get all the rooms in the house except for the kitchen and the bathrooms.
Mm-hmm.
Enjoy living in that house. And you really have to be like,
well, people who are saying that are looking for a way out of what's happening right now. I mean, I will say, some of the more frustrating tropes, I'm sure people can relate here, that or I should say, not tropes, but rather refrains in debates that you're having about Israel's crimes right now in Gaza, include things like, Netanyahu is horrible. I don't like him at all. And then allowing that thought to exist alongside, but what he is doing as the leader of Israel in Gaza is justified and also earnest in its desire to just target Hamas. Like, those two thoughts cannot exist alongside one another. If he's crazy, if he's horrible, then how are you able to shut off your brain and then also say that the actions that are being taken in Gaza are not an extension of his crazy and his horribleness? It's just like this cognitive dissonance, too. It's the same way that Israeli citizens can disapprove of Netanyahu and his judicial overhaul and then also be in favor of what's happening in Gaza. And I find that...
Oh, and they blame him for the incursion, too.
Understood. I mean, and I think there's some definitely fair criticisms on that front, but you have to go the many extra steps. And it feels like some of the liberal Zionist conversation, honestly, around this and in the mainstream U.S. press, which is why, like, honestly, watching cable news at this point, go to humanitarian organizations and read honest scholars on this. This is where you need to be, not CNN wartime news. They fall back on the Netanyahu is bad portion, and everyone seems to understand that in the West.
It's how do you balance this and stay neutral? It's Netanyahu's bad, but also these campus activists are bad. So you never deal with anyone like Pappy or even Amnesty International saying the word apartheid. It's just like that stuff is impolite, and that's like an infantile conversation that people like Brian Butler and the Atlantic magazine, they've infantilized this conversation for so long that it hasn't helped anybody.
I think it's also just the desire to still see Israel in the way that it's been mythologized as well, which is like, as long as we just got Netanyahu out, everything would be solved. And I
think that's a big part of it.
I mean, and he's one of the most psychotic leaders in the world.
He should go.
He should go. But there's an entire infrastructure in place that has kept him in power for decades at this point. I mean, brief respite for a few years. But like, how are you not having that structural analysis? You say you're a liberal. How are you not engaging in that structural analysis? It is baffling to me.
Yeah, at the American Prestige guys had Udi Greenberg on of Dartmouth, a professor of history, and he talked about how there's maybe a cleave happening now, whereas like there was unified from the center left to the right in Israel, like after the attacks, because it's very obviously traumatizing. But now it's like, maybe we shouldn't invade Gaza because we don't know what comes after that, and there's a little bit of hesitation there. And I think like that's because like that has never been addressed. Like, we've never talked about what actually does come next, because it's just bomb them.
And part of the problem is that there has not been the presupposition is that there has been a good faith, a desire within Israel as a monolith. I have no doubt that certain segments of the Israeli population, maybe even significant segments of the Israeli population, but in terms of like the political leadership, that there was a good faith desire to have like a two-state solution, over, in the 90s and the aughts. And again, you really need to curate your media diet in such a way that you don't bump in to all these examples of Netanyahu and others who nurtured Hamas's power so as to debilitate the ability of the Palestinian people to have a unified leadership so that they could actually gain, some type of statehood. Here, let's play this dumb Eric Weinstein clip or Weinstein clip or whatever the hell he is. This is on trigonometry.
Are you serious?
This is a real.
That's
thing,
the name of the podcast. I mean, it's just like. It's unbelievable.
Serious people.
It's unbelievable.
So it's math, but it's about ending wokeness.
Being anti-woke, yeah.
It's being anti-woke. This is we
It's
now
wearing
bring you
blazers.
into a dorm room at a college full of sophomores who none of the other kids like, and so this is what they do. We had kids in college like this, actually.
You know the word trigonometry, man? It kind of sounds like trigger.
All right, where are you starting? Is it at 22? Okay, yeah. Okay.
Frame. So give us the frame the way that you think the frame should be.
Well, my first comment is that you're going to use words like Palestinians. You're going to use words like occupation, occupied territories. Somebody else might use Judea and Samaria. Somebody else might say Palestine. As soon as I know the language, I know what the arguments are going to be.
Okay.
This is not my language, and I don't believe these things, and I've agreed to be more or less silent on a bunch of things while there was a peace process.
Okay, pause it. I'm
Because
sorry. It's not your language. It is not your language. You're right. It's the language of the United Nations. It's the language of Amnesty International. It's the language of Human Rights Watch. It's the language of scholars who actually cover this. It's the language of people within Israel who write for 972 magazine. It's the language of people who write for Haaretz. It is the language of many scholars and experts on this very topic, which he is not one of.
Sorry, Palestinian is the word he's objecting to?
Well, I mean, look, this is what he's doing is actually telling on himself, because there are people who have said there is no such thing as Palestinian, and that was Golda Meir, famously former prime minister of Israel. And
it's just Arabs, they say.
Well, the idea being that there was no nation state there within the the ideas in which we perceived it, which is also sort of funny insofar as, like, there are some people who say that you can't say that Israel is a settler colonial project because Jews were there 2,000 years ago. But let's just, imagine the idea of, I saw someone use this example on Twitter the other day. The idea of an African American in this country whose ancestors came from somewhere in the eastern part of the African continent. They were forcibly removed, kidnapped, brought to this country. You imagine the claim that they would have just a short 200 years. I'm not talking 2,000. I'm not talking 1,500 years. I'm talking 250, 300 years later, to go to some place in East Africa and not just settle there, but to forcibly remove people living there to say, like, this is where I was.
And then concentrate them in a small space, 141 square miles, 2.4 million people, control all the borders. It's more than that, though.
The details are secondary in terms of the question of, like, settler colonialism. Like, that idea would be ridiculous. People would laugh at you if you said that.
Well, the colonial history of Liberia actually has a lot to say about that, and it played out exactly how you would expect.
But what Weinstein's doing here is he's telling on himself, because I can hear his language, and it is because it is anomalous to what is basically what the world agrees these terms to mean, and that he has an issue with them, but he was silent because he didn't want to disrupt the peace process.
Silent on a bunch of things while there was a peace process, because peace processes are about BS to a certain extent. You have to lie through a peace process in order to get something at the end of it, and that failed. So, the first thing I'm going to say is I don't believe that this is an occupied people. I don't believe that the Arabs are under occupation, and that's going to sound crazy because you're not exposed to any perspective that sounds like that. So how could you ever come to that conclusion? You have groups of people who are offered a state who you're not listening to. They do not want the state that they are offered. They're offered a choice.
All right, pause it for 1 second. I just
and
want to make something clear too, and this is an interesting sleight of hand. They're not talking about the people who live in a specific area. When you say Arabs, you're talking about essentially an ethnicity.
Mm-hmm.
And if you say Arabs, like all Arabs are the same, then why wouldn't, if I grew up in this area in Palestine, why wouldn't I be shipped to Egypt? I'm an Arab. Why can't they go to Jordan? I'm an Arab. I mean, the point is they lived there. Whatever there you want to call there is. Okay? If I'm living in Massachusetts, which is really not fundamentally different once the borders are taken away, the laws from like Rhode Island or Connecticut or, New Hampshire
right.
or Vermont. And the idea you move me, and it's like, well, you're a New Englander. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, give me a break. It's absurd.
And then there's also the underlying racial undertones of it there.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
But here he goes in to explain how, like, they're little children who are not accepting things. Go.
Want the state that they are offered. They're offered a choice between a state and a chant. And if you know the chant, it's from the river to the sea. From the river to the sea is what they chose. You could have a state, or you could have a chant. And they want the chant.
I'm sorry. Pause it. It's not a chant. It is a chant at the protest. But is he saying that he doesn't think that if in a two-state solution, which he's talking about here, which Israel has taken over so much territory that this makes this quite difficult, but that the Palestinians should not have access to both the river and the sea? Is that really what the central claim is here? It's not a chant.
He's saying that the chant is basically calling for the elimination of Israel. And but the false dichotomy that he's setting up here is that there was an option between a state. If Israel, as a body politic, had legitimately wanted and saw that as the future, they would not have been on a multi-decade project to put illegal settlements in the West Bank. I mean, this is quite obvious.
Yeah.
And if you say to me, those literally tens of hundreds of thousands of people in these illegal settlements is a bargaining position, I could say to you, so's a chant. Good.
State, or you could have a chant. And they want the chant. They are the tip of the spear in the global battle against Western hegemony, against an occupying European power in holy Arab land. And they're not going to give up on that as a collective political entity for a relatively modest, prosperous state.
All right, pause it. So just to be clear on what he's saying, because this is really sort of like full-on insanity. He is saying that the Palestinians are actually just simply are being used in part by the greater Arab world.
You hear this all the time.
Because there is a holy Arab site. We should be clear. There's not a holy Arab site. There is the third most holy location for Muslims, but not a holy Arab site. And just if you need the differentiation, you know that there were Arabs whose Christian church was bombed in Gaza. Just so that, but let these geniuses be able to make their sort of like broad generalizations here. And he is suggesting that the Palestinians represent an assault on Western hegemony. First of all, on Western hegemony, ostensibly by all the other Arab nations are using the Palestinians as a way, this is the way you break apart Western hegemony in Israel. It's
funny he says
it's QAnon level derangement that we have to we're pretending that we're accepting as some sort of legitimate political discourse.
I mean, with regards to Western hegemony, it's funny he uses the term tip of the spear because that is literally what the armed portion of the African National Congress translates to, the MK. Interesting where this, speaking of word clouds.
Modest, prosperous state trading with the occupier. with joint economics, joint fate. That's very troubling to us because we have this idea of why wouldn't you want a state? You could have a state. You could be prosperous. You could send your kids to Purdue, and that's not easy for us. This is basically, if you think about motherhood, you don't think about Munchausen by proxy.
What?
Right? Now, what do you do with what do you do when you have a mother who comes to the hospital with a child who's continuously getting sick, and getting harmed? You have to ask, well, is it possible that the mother is harming the child? So you're about to see tiny children pulled out of rubble in northern Gaza. You're going to see it ad nauseum. You're going to see people rushing to the hospital. You're going to see mothers wailing. So we can talk about the whole thing about the martyrdom and how everybody prays that their family will be martyred. And you know what? Sometimes it's true. Sometimes you see on camera somebody saying, thank God they took my son, blah, blah, blah.
What?
But those are actually much more complicated things. Sometimes you turn the camera off and the person is crying because they know what they're supposed to say and they know what they're actually feeling. So my problem with this is that this is so much more complicated than the discussion we're pre-programmed to have that is guaranteed to fail. The richness of this problem.
You don't have to cut, but maybe have anybody competent to discuss it then, if it's so complex.
I hadn't known where this was going. So when I called this QAnon level derangement a second ago, he's just now essentially saying that the mother's wailing, some portions, some are wailing earnestly, but some are crisis actors. Very, very serious person over there at trigonometry, whatever the hell it is.
Well, there's the long-standing sort of like chant that folks like Weinstein have used in the past have been when they love their children more than they love killing Israelis, that's when this will end. And that's sort of the territory he was in. But he did concede that maybe part of that might be a function of like they're part of a political movement and they're oppressed. He doesn't say oppressed. He doesn't believe that they're oppressed. He doesn't even believe that they're occupied, which is a bizarre thing to do because that is, to the extent that the word occupied means anything in any context, the measurements we have are the international community, and there's no controversy there.
Yeah.
But
Again, you can't talk about that.
He's just decided that's a made up term for people like if they want to frame it in a certain way.
Campus
That's just the
activists
reality.
use.
I mean, liberal Zionists are saying that. They're saying using the term occupied, occupier, genocide, apartheid, all are anti-Semitic tropes.
But what's fascinating about that is he starts to go down this where you're going to see horrible images of babies being pulled out of rubble. And then he realizes, like, there's really nothing that he can say that is in somehow going to mitigate that. So he's got to shift quickly to saying that the mothers are happy that their kids are dead. And then he realizes, like, well, I've probably gone a little too far with that. I mean, the fact is, the reason why there are posters, I see them all over New York now, of kidnapped Israelis, is because activists are trying to keep these. There's really two things. One, keep people in mind that there are 200 hostages taken by Hamas, and two, to sort of mitigate the impact of the images to the extent that we have any of the several thousand children who have now been killed and the parents who are having the several thousand, adults killed and the parents and the sisters and the brothers of people who have been killed there. Those are the two reasons. And the first, I think, is, fairly legitimate. I would also recommend that they make sure that they put those posters around Bibi Netanyahu's residence because they clearly don't care.
I mean, the reporting coming out of Israel is that the families of the hostages want a ceasefire and negotiations, hostage transfers, which is what's happened in Israel before. But it seems to me, and this is again by Udi Greenberg on American Prestige, but that the settler component of the Netanyahu government, Likud, prefers, of course, to use this as a pretext to bomb Gaza.
I also, frankly, think that I suspect that the story of those first couple of hours and days, frankly, in the Hamas attack, we're going to find it's not so clear cut in terms of how much the potential for hostages were how that was treated by the Israeli government. I mean, there are, and I'm just reading stuff in Haaretz, and there's only so much that I can read, but we'll see. But nevertheless, he's out there trying to figure an argument where when you see these images, here is an ability for you to not have them impact you.
To dehumanize.
To dehumanize.
And it's this, and notice also how he's invoking a very well-trodden anti-Muslim, anti-Arab trope about the way that they value their own lives and their own children's lives. He's trying, in essence, to evoke imagery of suicide bombings and things of that nature, of martyrdom, when he says people pray that they are martyrs. That is essentially saying, look at these savages on the other side who don't support gay rights. That's another trope that you hear all the time. That don't support gay rights in Gaza. They're just uncivilized. I mean, and they're engaging in a holy war where they're fine with being martyred and dying because they'd rather chant instead of listen to us, the civilized white folk over here, who are offering them this generous statehood.
They're pathological and they can't govern themselves. I'm seeing that a lot. Like from the look, I like to be both sides about this, but the Hamas attack proved that Palestinians can't govern themselves. Like, what this whole situation proves is that there's one state there, there's one government governing, and it's not capable of governing, and we need an international solution. And it can't be trusted for like the post-Gaza thing. Can't even be trusted, like, I think, even if it doesn't do the ground invasion, we need the international community to step in and say, like, we need to put this on a different track.
Let's just listen to a little more of this, because it's a huge opportunity for us now that there's not a peace process that Weinstein can actually.
I like that he would have. I mean, think of that delusion.
I've been holding back because I wanted to let the parties, but now I speak.
This is so much more complicated than the discussion we're pre-programmed to have that is guaranteed to fail. The richness of this problem, where Hamas is effectively the mother in a Munchausen by proxy situation, right? And the children, you're damn straight you're going to be pulling babies out of that rubble because that's what Hamas wants. And Israel cannot figure out how to extricate herself from this dance of death.
But that's why we're here. That's what we're talking about.
Right. So what I'm trying to say is, you don't get out of this. You have a very unconventional foe in Hamas.
Oh my God.
And in totalitarian Islam and in jihad and in ISIS and Al-Qaeda.
Pathology, yep.
Pause it. Incidentally, how does this explain the West Bank, where you have secular leadership? How does it explain the nurturing of Hamas when the PLO and Fatah were essentially secular organizations and Israel wanted to disempower them? Not terribly different from us funding the madrasas and the mujahideen against the Soviet Union at the time. But that's details.
I mean, they're both Muslims.
This is details.
That's what he'd say about the West Bank, is that in their Arabness, Muslims. They're supporting Hamas anyway.
The IDW special.
Yeah.
Just a little more.
Mainstream media refuses to show us the images that they showed us during the Vietnam War through mainstream outlets. If you saw what I've seen, if you watched the Hamas videos, the ISIS videos, if you read Dabiq, if you did any of this stuff, you'd be sick to your stomach. You'd be a changed person. And we don't have that. I remember the night.
First off, he goes into talking about the images from Vietnam and that we never saw the falling man from the Twin Towers. There is no doubt the footage of the Hamas attack would be stomach turning to watch. There's also no doubt that there's a reason why Israel put Gaza into a complete blackout, because they didn't want images coming out of there as well. There's a reason why there have been dozens of reporters targeted and killed because they don't want images to come out. This is not, there's no profundity there. And the dynamic between ISIS and Hamas, to the extent that there's any shared tactics, the situation is completely different. But again, where does he go with this? It ultimately is a way of basically just saying, I'm not advocating a complete annihilation of the Palestinians living in Gaza, but I'm also telling you, don't have your heartstrings pulled by all these images you're going to see. Let's just let things take their natural course.
Yeah. Bradley, I just wanted to shout this out because friend of the show, Francesca Fiorentini, she is her partner, Matt Lieb, is a comedian. He's also, he's a Jewish man. He put this out here. And this is just like a great, short, funny, kind of, it's good for levity, explanation of all of these arguments that you're hearing and how absurd it is on its face. Just because it was so much of what Weinstein was deploying there is what Matt is talking about here.
I, an American Jew, am going to tell you how to correctly criticize Israel without being accused of anti-Semitism. Here are some don'ts. Do not overstate your case. Don't go throwing around the word apartheid state. Apartheid only ever happened in South Africa, and you can't use that word again. You can't just keep using words. Call it something that is correct, like a kerfuffle. Just be like, oh, that's all right, kerfuffle, they go there. Do not mention the Palestinians or the occupation, okay? If you want to talk about problems in Israel, talk about how there's a lot of stray cats and how the traffic's really bad. Do not throw around the word genocide. You guys just throw it around like it's just nothing. Do not support a one-state solution. If there was a one-state solution, Israelis might lose their demographic majority, and that is literally genocide. Do not support a two-state solution. Do not support a solution. What, you think you got all the answers? You're so smart. Do not be a Palestinian, an Arab, a black person, or a Muslim, okay? All of those groups are racist against Jews. And I think I know a thing or two about racism because I just said something racist. Do not be a reform Jew. The only real Jews are religious Jews or, Israeli citizens. Do not be an anti-Zionist Israeli. What the are you doing? Do not be an anti-Zionist Orthodox Jew. That ruins my narrative. Fuck my shit up. I don't like that. Do not call yourself an anti-Zionist. There's many definitions of Zionism. There's the nice one, and then there's what's actually happening. And while you may be against what's actually happening in Israel right now, when you say you're an anti-Zionist, you make me think that you're against the fantasy version of Zionism that I have in my head. Just call yourself a liberal Zionist. It's that easy. Do not be a liberal Zionist. Liberals are basically leftists, which are basically socialists, which are basically communists, which is Stalin, and Stalin hated Jews. So what are you, Stalin? To be safe, call yourself a Zionist. Do not be a Jew. If you are not a Jew and you're like, oh, but what about the Palestinians? Then how am I supposed to know that you actually care about the Palestinians? What if you're just crying because you hate me? Do not call for...
Okay, so that's basically it.
That's great.
I just thought that was such a good explanation of the boxes that you're put into to avoid saying what's actually happening here, and just don't. It's hard right now, but don't back down. What history will remember this moment.
Trigonometry is the math that you do to figure out who's going to get the biggest whiff when four guys sit around smelling farts. And I'll just say, we talk about. I differentiate myself from the isolationist, not another tax dollar to an exclusionist ethno state, absolutely. But if this was a one-state democratic state where we could use our government money to try to actually build a state where both people could live together, and we could maybe withhold, okay, if the Palestinians aren't treating, if it's going to be a Jewish minority, then we start withdrawing funding, and we use our leverage that way. I actually don't have a problem with that. I think we can actually afford that given the position America's been put in.
I don't disagree. Yeah.
646-257-3920 is the number. Turn the voicemail off. Let's just do this because it's fun. Ron DeSantis, we're a week away from the next Republican debate. It's going to be on November 8th, I think it is. It's a Wednesday evening. This is Ron DeSantis showing up in the Patrick Bet David podcast.
Yeah, where's your signature, Sam?
Sam, you may have sat in this very chair.
Yeah, did you sign one of those? What is that? Like a lockbox
No,
you see at a bank or something?
It's a former bank, and that's actually the former safe of the bank. Like you walk in, it's got a huge safe door, and they bought that, and I guess maybe that.
I mean, it's their branding, right? Like they're always talking about markets and case studies, and
he's a businessman who's buying his way into the podcast business, and I did not sign that. I was not invited to. I didn't realize.
Odd.
Makes me feel a little bad in retrospect.
Come on, PDB.
But here is Ron DeSantis. PDB, incidentally, is a big Donald Trump guy. I mean, he doesn't try and be explicit anything, but he's a sort of a Trump supporter. And this, although I have to say, I did appreciate.
Okay, you talk about attention. Are you the type of person, like I have people around me that love to say, hey, Pat, you got something between your teeth. These are the annoying people in your life, right? Hey, Pat, pull your zipper up. Hey, Pat, do this. Hey, pull one of your socks is lower than the other one. I'm sure your marketing team points out how they're trying to troll you in the marketplace. Okay, I'm sure they're doing that. Can you bring this one clip? I know you were on, what do you call it? On, what was it? Bill Maher, and Bill Maher talked about the boots. I've seen you walk with these boots. Go ahead and play this clip. This on TikTok went viral. It doesn't have 1 million views. It doesn't have, 10 million views. This thing's got 1.2 million likes. And some people are wondering,
what are they? I don't even. I haven't seen that.
They've not shown this to you. Okay, What they're trying to say with this is that in your boots you have heels.
No.
That's what they're trying to say.
Those are just standard off the rack Lucchese.
How tall are you? How tall are you, Governor? How tall?
5'11".
5'11". Okay.
I just saw somebody on Twitter say this actually, and I thought it was pretty funny. That 5'11" apparently that's a lie. That's a lie.
Yeah.
No, not that he's not 5'11". It's like whenever any guy says they're 5'11", that's a lie.
Yeah.
Because if you're 5'11", you say you're 6 feet. And that's what I do. Now, but technically I'm 5'11" 3/4. So I'm rounding up. I mean, it makes sense.
Understood. And then
But
when
I
your
did- it
hair's
did occur to
kind
me.
of big, it just
I'm not
it
even
makes up the
including my hair.
difference.
I'm not even including my hair.
Whoa.
I believe because when I measure, I push down as much as I can on that. So
Intellectually honest of you.
yeah, but 5'11" 3/4. But I say 6 feet. Those boots are it makes me feel bad because I don't know how the pain associated with.
I
those
know.
boots is
I
super-
know. I
That's
mean,
impressive
It
that-
honestly, it's like the modern day version of a corset for this kind of presidential candidate that he's completely putting himself through this gender.
How pissed
surgery,
do you think Ron
or gender
DeSantis is right
performance.
here?
Yeah.
I know. I can't.
I love how he pretended not to know. It's the most online campaign in the history of the Republican Party. I mean, they announced on Twitter Spaces to just be like, "Hey, what's up, Elon? I'm an edgelord too." They haven't seen this. This is like the biggest. This is the only thing
Who
people
knew?
are talking about with his campaign at this point.
Who knew? All right, let's keep going. This is great.
How tall are you, Governor? How tall?
5'11".
5'11". Okay. Why don't you wear tennis shoes and dress shoes?
I do wear tennis shoes when I work out. Yeah,
You do?
100%. Yep.
Okay. I got a gift for you. I'd love for you to wear.
No, pause it for 1 second.
I
Okay,
shot-
here's how would you react if you weren't wearing these lifts? You'd be like, dude, are you serious? Here, are we really gonna do this? I mean, do you remember when Donald Trump had Jimmy Fallon, rub his hair?
Tuss his hair, yeah, to say if it's real.
Yeah. I mean, that's and good for Jimmy Fallon for humanizing Donald Trump. But in this instance, if you're Ron DeSantis and you want to put this to bed, what do?
Take your shoes off. But look
check these out.
Look at his face. Look at the pain on his
he
face as
is
he's trying to smile through it.
And you know what you can
Squinting
see?
at it. Which boots are those again?
You can see. Oh, what? 2 million views? I never heard of that. And then you can tell he's getting uptight because he buttons his coat after he turns back Are we? Did we go back a little bit? Okay, watch him button his coat. All right, go ahead. And then he's also really quick because Patrick Bet David offers him some shoes, and he immediately says it's unethical for me to accept any gifts, so that he doesn't have to try the shoes on and take his existing shoes off. Go ahead.
Sure, they're doing that. Can you bring this one clip? I know you were on what do you call it? On what was it? Bill Maher, and Bill Maher talked about the boots. I've seen you walk with these boots. Go ahead and play this clip. This on TikTok went viral. It doesn't have 1 million views. It doesn't have 10 million views. This thing's got 1.2 million likes. And some people are wondering,
what are they? I don't even. I haven't seen that.
They've not shown this to you. Okay,
No,
what they're trying to say with this is that in your boots you have heels.
No.
That's
Yeah,
what they're trying to say.
those are just standard off the rack Lucchese.
How tall are you? How tall are you, Governor? How tall are you?
Buttons his coat.
5'11"?
Button his coat. Right. Button his coat.
Why
right
don't
there.
you wear tennis shoes and dress shoes?
I do wear tennis shoes when I work out. Yeah, 100%.
You do?
Yep.
Okay. I got a gift for you. I'd love for you to wear, okay, I shop at Ferragamo, okay, and
So relatable.
I don't accept gifts. I can't accept it.
I'm
sorry.
I'm gonna put it here, and Ferragamo can get a nice sponsorship. And then, if you wear it, you fair it. I know.
No, but here's the thing. I mean, I think with just
Now he
how
unbuttons
politics works is, Yogi Berra, when he was in the Yankees, they said, Yogi, he doesn't look like a Yankee. He doesn't do this.
Yeah.
And Yogi's basically like, okay, if you say I'm ugly, that's fine, but you don't hit a baseball with your face. And so what we're doing is, really, I think, doing the issues, the leadership. People that are poking at you for different things, that's fine, but ultimately that is not, I think it's a sign of strength. I think if they could say he was a horrible governor, he was this, he was that, then they would definitely do it. But they don't do that because I don't think that they have much there. We've been an exemplary leader. We've gotten things done.
We have been.
We would be somebody that would be obviously a really strong candidate. That's part of the reason the media attacks me and everything like that.
So I would say this to you. I think if your marketing team talks to you regularly, they either share with you, but you got such a busy schedule. I'm running 9 companies. Half the time I don't even know what's going on. People tell me, did you see this? I'm like, I can't see everything. So I'm sure you're not seeing everything. But I'm a big fan of yours, okay? I am not a fan of your marketing team. I'm just not. And I can say that comfortably. You can say I have one of the best marketing teams, no problem. Because I think your book was a miss. I think there's a lot of opportunity that's been out there that was a miss. I was on a flight one time with Bill O'Reilly.
Why was it a miss?
I think your book could have done very well. And
I was the #1 book in the country for 2 weeks.
Yes, not a long time though. You're a guy that should be the leading candidate for president. You were the best governor during COVID, hands down. Nobody did it better than you. No one. You had a fight. You stood up to these bullies, to all these a-holes that were trying to manipulate the voters like me, and we were walking around as if we're weird, and you stood up for those people. And I loved it. I respected it.
As if we're weird.
Defending you constantly, and I'm sitting there saying, why are we not telling this story? Why are we not going out there selling millions of copies of this book on what you did during COVID? So that to me was a missed opportunity. By the way, your marketing team can hate me. I've talked to most. I'm just giving my opinion on that.
With the book, I didn't really have a marketing team. I mean, you're doing it, and people sell it, or they don't sell it.
This is amazing.
Oh, the courage to be free.
And Patrick Bet David does this. This is the way that he is a salesman, and so this is the way that he knows he can both he knows what he's doing to Ron DeSantis, and his audience doesn't. Look, he's being very respectful. He says he really likes Ron DeSantis.
But you're lying about your height, and your book's been a failure, and your marketing team sucks.
But it's not his fault. It's not his fault.
Yeah.
Matt, for instance, Matt, I think is great. I think Matt is great. It's just that the way he talks doesn't allow people to realize how great he is. Because when he talks, he sounds so horrible.
And Matt, I just don't
he's
like
great.
your body wash team. I like you, but you smell so bad.
That's the thing, Matt.
It's just you've got to change up the body wash team.
And you're
so great. You should not smell so bad.
Yeah, but you do. You smell so bad.
I'm gonna try to tell Matt he's so great. I wish that your smell was as great as I think you are.
Yeah.
But it's really not.
Left Reckoning should be at 1,500 patrons by now.
Put it up on the screen. Put it up on the screen.
I will just say, like, I looked all up and down the Lucchese boots, which I've never heard of before, but Lucchese
Off the
boots,
rack,
and none of those. They all look like cowboy boots.
I'm
So
looking at it too,
When he
right.
said like this Lucchese, and then he like kind of like mumbled something, I think he was
Off the
admitting
rack.
that
He said off the rack, Lucchese.
Oh, really? Well,
Yeah,
I'm
what
not
is
seeing any, but I am seeing a political article. 3 expert shoemakers say Ron DeSantis is probably wearing height boosters.
Yeah, has the
I think that
guy
article was
weighed in?
I think that article where was the menswear guy Derek Guy
Oh,
talking
good.
to 3 shoe experts saying that he's most likely wearing lifters
Oh,
or whatever they're called.
But honestly, if Ron DeSantis had a personality, he'd take his shoe off and he'd go, look.
Yeah, here's what they
and
are.
then go into the whole thing of like, when they can't attack your policy, blah, 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 whatever it is.
Yeah.
I mean, but he honestly, I feel like, I thought he was going to cry.
Oh,
Yeah.
me too.
I
Yeah.
thought he was going to cry.
His face is so red.
And also like the cowboy boots I'm looking at, cowboy boots do not have like a crinkled, almost like, the leather being so elastic. It's much more straight up. We saw that. It's almost trying to hug his calf muscle there. I mean, not to get too far into it. It's not what a cowboy boot looks like. Why don't you wear dress shoes? I mean, they always talk about too how like the Fetterman and the left they don't know how to dress or be men anymore. Hey, buddy, Ron DeSantis, get some menswear. Experts.
I can't imagine the amount of humiliation he must feel, and the idea that like, how is he going to go and now he's sort of locked into those boots for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
This is in Politico?
Yeah, Politico has been doing some good, important work on this. And I just want to go to this. Yes, perfect. There it is. Bingo. So let's zoom in here. So we have a diorama here with several things marked. Let me just zoom out a little bit so we can read the...
You see how crinkled it is? Like how, yeah, it's like to make room for the heel.
So we'll go there. Shoemaker Nicholas Templeman notes that his unusually high wrinkle in the boot,
There we go.
suggesting DeSantis ankle sits up high. 2, according to cowboy bootmaker Graham Ebner, the leather appears stretched here, further suggesting a lifted heel.
Yeah.
3,
Emma
Ebner
knows what she's talking
I know,
about.
I have boots.
Ebner says DeSantis' foot seems to end here, causing the toe of the boot to curl upward. 4, Ebner believes this knot comes from a joint at the base of DeSantis' big toe sticking out. So, yeah.
I wonder if he had to have his feet like broken just to fit into the shoe.
He's like a ballerina, right?
Oh
like
my
when they break their toes to fit into those.
I think we have to be true to our principles, and that all gender affirming sort of measures
Understood.
we support. So,
But I
good
just
for
don't
you.
understand like why this was so important for him to do, because you can't tell how tall a guy is on TV, anyways. He was just afraid
Right.
of Trump.
It honestly, like that, and like his weight loss stuff. Like, why are you so focused on these very superficial things?
I mean,
because he
Chris
hates himself.
Christie. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
Because he hates himself, and he should.
Well,
you should hate.
all I know is if none
I'm
of his
6'4".
opponents bring this up a week from now, or if there isn't like, if Vivek doesn't say like, I would like, Governor DeSantis to stand up,
Yeah.
stand on your own 2 feet, or if there has to be
Right.
somebody who says like, those are big shoes to fit or
Yeah.
fill, or something like, put the right foot forward.
Unlike
or,
Ron, I'll give Fauci the boot.
yeah,
Governor DeSantis, you're talking nonsense on stilts right now.
Somebody exactly. That's Bergam, right? Bergam should come in with that. Like,
They're about to go to commercial break. Ron wears heels.
Ron-
Mr. Governor Burgum. Okay, that's enough.
Look
Watch
at
your
that.
mic.
Oh yeah, it can't be Trump. That's right. I'm 6'4".
calling from a 513 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Oh, wow. Is this me?
Yeah, it's you.
Hi, this is Al from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Al from Cincinnati, Ohio. What's on your mind?
So kind of in the theme of the ballot issues earlier, in Cincinnati, there's a ballot issue, I believe, issue 22 right now. And basically it's voting on whether we sell, Cincinnati sells our railroad to Norfolk Southern, the same company that was responsible for the East Palestine disaster. So currently, Norfolk Southern has a lease already on the railroad until 2051. But they're offering, I believe, like $1.4 billion to just buy it outright. And this is important because Cincinnati is the only city in the entire country that has their own railroad. And even like the mayor and most of the city council is putting out commercials to sell the railroad. And what they're saying is that the money from the sale is going to go to things like highways and education and stuff like that, stuff that should already be paid for via taxes.
Right.
And then I'm not sure if any of you guys are aware of this, but Cincinnati is a very, very corrupt city. So in 2019 or 2020, 3 or 4 of the 9 city council members were arrested by the FBI for like fraud. PG Sittenfeld, the front runner for mayor, he's like a Princeton dude. He was really young. He was basically like set for life for Cincinnati politics. His court case is still going on. So anybody that is listening from Cincinnati or Hamilton County, vote yes on issue 22 and also yes on issue 20, which is funding libraries. But yeah. And then one other thing I wanted to say was, as an Arab, I'm very, very heartened by your guys' coverage of the Palestine situation. I have so many friends from Palestine who are having family members killed and have for many, many years. And it is also heartening to see, and maybe this is just my group of people, but and as a person on a college campus, many, many, many young people are in support of Palestine and kind of rejecting the propaganda that Israel has been putting out for the last 70-ish years. So the future looks bright.
Yeah, I just also think it's really instructive for people to understand that young people grew up. I was born in 1994. Almost my entire life where I was starting to think about these issues, Israel was run by an incredibly right-wing government. So that is, when Sam, there was more hope when you were experiencing this in the 90s, right? But for a lot of our younger generations, it's just we have only seen this behavior from Israel our entire lives. So I think that's part of it. But
appreciate the call.
Yeah, thank you.
I really do think that the Biden administration and the Democrats are going to be in for a hugely rude awakening once they see how much this is shifting in the country, public opinion.
Yeah. Calling from a 513 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 513? 513? Back into the queue. 360. Calling from a 360.
Hello?
Hello?
Hi. I didn't expect to get through, but I guess I should say the obligatory, is this me?
It is, in fact, you. And what is your name and where are you calling from?
I'm Sydney from Vancouver, Washington, and I'm calling regarding my rep, Marie Glusenkamp-Perez. I'm a union leader here. We went on strike in 2020 and had some great gains. We have a lot of teachers' unions on strike currently. And we had a meeting with her regarding a lot of teachers not fond of her votes regarding the student loan forgiveness. And she spent the entire meeting dividing us between basically blue-collar and white-collar workers. And we tried to explain that, unions are just workers versus bosses. And her money from the chamber was concerning. And I'm just wondering if you guys have any ideas of how we can get her to maybe adopt more worker-friendly rhetoric, or I'm just concerned about her re-election chances given she's running against Joe Kent, who is terrifying to us, but she's also losing support of the very, very strong teachers unions here in town. So Wondering if you guys have any thoughts or advice.
I know that she's awful, and I understand that district sucks, so you can't expect much, but that is exactly what I have come to expect from her, and it's really appalling to me. And so, like, I understand Joe Kent's awful. I don't know what you can do with her, because she seems ideologically committed to that sort of divide the working class thing. And I mean, I don't know. She's I mean, like, I don't know, maybe you guys have something.
I got nothing. I mean, there is still like sort of this disease within the Democratic Party when they're in a sort of purplish district type of situation where they think that they can move towards the right, and that's going to somehow convince people that there's some type of like, mystery crew in there who wants sort of the Republican light version, I guess. Or she has this ideological thing, and in which case, she's on like she's hell bent to lose. I think I mean all I can imagine is, sort of, I don't know. It sounds like you have done a lot in terms of at least, trying to present it to her. I don't know if it ends up being more protests. I don't know. I really don't know how you show that to a politician who doesn't want to see it.
I mean, even more concerning to me than changing her mind is just convincing these other speakers that, took her over the finish line last time, that it's worth it to even vote for her again.
I mean, I don't know how to explain it. I mean, at the end of the day, sometimes the most important aspect of a congressperson is that they will not be voting for Mike Johnson as majority leader. Honestly, listen, I find Josh Gottheimer to be about as reprehensible of a person / representative as you can get. But at the end of the day, like, there's legislation that wouldn't have passed and that maybe could have passed because he was there as opposed to a Republican.
Right.
I mean, that's just sort of like that is the effed up thing about our politics, or maybe that's just like human nature. I don't know. But I mean, look at Kristen Sinema. It's not always clear to me that politicians, I think they try and operate in their own best interest, but they don't always know what they're doing. Like Kristen Sinema can't possibly think that she's helped herself, and like who knows what agenda she had, but
she was like, apparently there was stuff in Romney's book where Sinema said that she doesn't care if she loses re-election because she, quote, saved the Senate by myself, and that she can, quote, serve on any board I want to.
Well, that tracks.
But that was her
But
goal.
I'm not convinced if you're not you're a former senator from Arizona anyways, and that you couldn't serve on any corporate board that you wanted to.
Although, but she was like specifically maybe one of the closest Democrats possible to the Chamber of Commerce. So this could have been her goal the entire time.
I wouldn't
serve a term, cash the hell in.
Yeah.
And it seems
probably something for the Green Party to think about.
Right.
Appreciate the call.
What's the name of that representative again? It's a hyphenated last name. The Washington representative.
Glusenkamp Perez.
Yeah. I mean, she's positioning herself as the Sinema in the House.
Well, that's who she was talking about.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was maybe spaced out for a sec.
Oh yeah,
I didn't hear the Sinema part.
Oh no, well that's the point. It seems to me like I find it hard to believe that if Kristen Sinema had been just like, I don't know, slightly to the left of Joe Manchin, that she would have any trouble after a term in the Senate being sitting on boards. But I don't know.
Gotcha.
All right, let's do one more call. Calling from an 832 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Is this me?
Yes, it is you. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Oh, wow. Sorry. This is Evan from Texas.
Evan from Texas. What's on your mind?
Wow. I'm a long time listener, first time caller. This is the first time I've ever tried to call in. I didn't expect to get through. Thank you for taking my call. A couple things. I did miss a little bit of the first hour. I didn't know if y'all had time to talk about anything that we're voting on the 7th here in Texas.
No, we didn't. We didn't get to Texas.
So there's one thing that I want to talk about specifically just because it annoyed me specifically with.
Hey, can you pick up your phone? Are you on a speakerphone?
Oh, I'm so sorry. So sorry. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so just with all of my elected leaders being rather old these days, it kind of annoyed me that one of the things that the Texas House is or the Texas Congress is giving to us to vote on is whether or not the retirement age for judges here in the state should be raised from 75 to 79. And I just think it's really annoying that no one in this country seems to be interested in getting people out of power right now, even on a state level. I mean, it's just extending their careers until the grave. And, so that was rather irritating to me, I guess, just on a local level.
All right. So what ballot number is that? We can tell people to vote. I'm with you on that. I think at 75 is a good time for you to head
Frankly,
out of
I don't know.
public position.
Well, I mean, if I'm being honest, Sam, it was like, why is the retirement age like 65? And then they can still, I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. It's like the official retirement age in this country is supposed to be 65 or whatever it is. I mean, it's nuts to me that it's even as old as it is at 75.
Well, I mean, those are two different.
Yeah.
Those are two. 65 is when you can retire.
Right, but I mean, yeah.
And like I am sympathetic to maybe closer to a 70. Although as you get up there, you start to you loosen up a little bit. But the other point is that it's not just a question of competence, and within like I guess private situations, you can make a better assessment. But when you're talking about a public office, it is healthy for a democracy to have new people in. I mean, I'm not for term limits, but per se, although I think there is an argument maybe, excessive, maybe like, I don't know, multiple term limits. But it just seems excessive. 79 just seems excessive. 72 would be okay.
Yeah.
But the point being, it's healthy to have a turnover. Not, one where, it happens every 2 years necessarily, but forced. But I think, that's absurd. But appreciate the call. I don't want to spend too much time.
No, it's the ballot number. If I could get the ballot number in there. So it's number 13 for the judges one, and then there's another one that they're trying to get us to just constitutionally for the state constitution to prohibit a wealth tax. They actually did this with the first ever election I voted in. I think it was back in 2019. They did it with the state income tax. That's banned by our state constitution. The wealth tax one is number 3. I suspect that'll pass anyway. There are also a number of ones that have to do with our energy and how the state invests in different energy sectors. I would ask that we pretty much vote in general yes on all of those just because of how terrible ERCOT is down here. We've never really done anything to fix it as far as I know since that big freeze. So if people could go out and vote, early voting's out right now. So, if people could go out and do that.
Appreciate the call. Thanks.
Thank you for taking it. Have a good one.
You too. We may get to one more call, but we got which one of these should we take? I was thinking 7 or 8.
I was thinking 7.
Okay.
But wait, well, is 8 Crowder?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Let's do 7 first, and then we'll do Crowder.
Okay.
If we got time.
All right.
We just sort of covered almost like a very similar dynamic with Eric Weinstein, which is a projection about the use of language. And there is I think an emotional aspect of this for Jews to hear the word apartheid because nobody likes to think that they're that they are in some way implicated in apartheid, but the word means something, and it has been used by Israeli officials and former Israeli officials going on years now. In this context, it was not like there were some lefty activists and the former head of Mossad says like, they've convinced me.
Yeah.
It is these people very often worked with their counterparts in South Africa, either during the apartheid regime or shortly thereafter, and they see what John Kerry, that screaming leftist John Kerry, saw a decade ago, which is you can either have a Jewish state or you can have a democracy. You cannot have both.
And also, I want to say, not just former Israeli officials, the United Nations rights experts, apartheid. Human Rights Watch, apartheid. The humanitarian groups on this front are saying the words apartheid.
Amnesty International, yeah.
So they don't like these words.
The conceit is all that it's only like college campus people saying this.
No. These are the most respected humanitarian rights groups in the world.
And they don't like these words. And so, because they realize it's uncomfortable. Here's Greg Gutfeld talking about another words that are reality, but make him uncomfortable.
If you want to see how sheep-like the media is, what 2 words are you now hearing that came from the head of the UN? Collective punishment. That's the new phrase. You're going to be hearing that a lot this week. You already are, and it's being targeted at Israelis. They're unleashing collective punishment. It's a nonsense phrase. It's a if anybody is guilty for what's happening, it's Hamas. Hell, you could say the American citizens under Biden are experiencing collective punishment. The New York City protests make for strange bedfellows. You have young girls who go by they and them, supporting those who would eviscerate them in a heartbeat. It's amazing to see these so-called progressives, the oh so tolerant and caring, siding with the most extreme, the most dogmatic, the most intolerant factions on earth. Girls with nose rings and pink hair agree with old bearded men in robes about what to do with the bad people. This message is scary because what it means is that the contagion has spread from one generation to another. And that means it is here to stay. It's here in America. The melting pot has now been poisoned. We've done the poisoning. Last week I said this was hysteria. You know it's hysteria when the Desert Massacre doesn't penetrate your mindset. That's the proof. And it's scary. The reason why the protests are scary is that the protesters hate that massacre, not because of its sheer brutality. You can go on forever talking about the disgustingness. It's that the massacre validates Israel's stance and justification for cohesion and self-defense. It's no different than the Holocaust denial. It's a defense to protect your bad ideas so you can continue to hate. The protesting here is easy. You can do it for 3 hours, go home and go back to PlayStation. But over there, people are defending their right to exist. You aren't sacrificing a thing. You're fine. They aren't. You could have protested October 8th. It would have been real. But weeks later, it comes off as performative. And it's amplified to preserve a terror sect, not to ensure peace or prevent war. The American...
What's bizarre about this is that he doesn't even seem to know what he's reading off of this thing.
It just was a bunch of like criticisms about the address and attire of the women. He keep going back to girls at these protests. I was at the protest they're showing the B-roll of
with your purple hair.
Yeah, all my purple hair. It was one of the most diverse protests, and I've covered protests as a reporter, and I've been a part of protests in my life. One of the more diverse, incredible experiences of like mass demonstration I've ever been a part of, just to put that out there from my firsthand experience. But
But what's interesting is that so much of what the right and is doing is attempting to provide mechanisms to not believe your eyes, to not it's all defensive. I mean, the idea that collective punishment means nothing is absurd. We know that it doesn't mean anything. There has been almost a century's worth of like international law against collective punishment. So the concept exists. And if the concept exists, and you have literally 2 days ago, Netanyahu going out there and talking about Amalek, the fierce enemy of the Israelites, for whom the Bible says, we should say the first book, everything should be wiped out. Every ox, every ass, every suckling, every child,
infant. Yep.
You should wipe out all of them. And if this is supposedly Hamas, and we are to believe that Hamas is the true dictator in Gaza, which I think there's a very good argument. Not terribly democratic situation there. Certainly, over half the population is not even eligible to vote for these people. There hasn't been a vote there in 16 years. There's, arguments about their legitimacy. But certainly, if you're going to make that in the exact same statement as he did there, right? Like he blames Hamas. Well, if you blame Hamas, then how can you allow for thousands of children to be bombed to death?
Yep.
How can you allow for thousands of adults who, in your formulation, are innocent? How can you say that's not collective punishment? Well, you've got
that's really who accepts it.
That's the point.
Who really accepts collective punishment is Greg Gutfeld.
Right. I mean, and he's trying to deny the existence essentially of the word. But if we're trying to, these people are negating their claims of immorality, which are, like, especially in the wake of the terror attack, completely applicable to Hamas about not valuing the lives of innocents, and then disregarding it when it comes to the bombing, the indiscriminate bombing of Gaza, which is like what we have control over, not Hamas's terror attack. We have control over this because we fund it. Like, is one of the planks of that is supposedly Hamas doesn't respect the lives of innocents. But then they're saying that it's fine to kill innocents because, hey, they're human shields and there's no concept of collective punishment. I also just think it's notable that conservatives seemingly have they're so morally bankrupt in this way that they cannot even understand the idea that people are not completely campist in their perception of humanity and that they just might actually want to stand up for innocent life. Like, you can just see how he just doesn't even contend with that fact.
I think it's by design. I mean, I don't think it's a lack of capability. It's his job to tell his audience that A, collective punishment doesn't even, what the hell does that even mean? And then B, anybody who's protesting are the same he, she, they, people who want, trans people in your bathroom. I mean, this is the multiple ways in which they're trying to obscure what's really going on here. And that's his job. That is his job. I mean, and I don't even think he's that great at it. I don't think he had a clue on half of what he was reading there. That's certainly not what he wrote. Then he's got like a 2-page, who knows who wrote that up for him.
Improvised, war crime denial.
Yeah. I mean, unlike Greg Gutfeld, the left has the capacity to see past people's skin color and their association with the government that rules them, or their religion, and chooses to stand in opposition to massive war crimes being funded by our very government. And I mean, I'm sure the conservative audience that he's appealing to there can't understand it. Maybe he does, but again, too, like, the reason that people are in the streets, it's a very simple concept. I would like to take Gutfeld to a politics 101 class about the funding of the bombardment of Gaza is because You protest what your government does. That is the nature of protests for the most part. The United States is funding Israel. Israel is committing these atrocities. That's the reason that's the focus. It's not that difficult to comprehend.
Can we listen to just the second part of this, just because he gets to the skin color aspect of this very, very directly?
Okay.
Of a terror sect, not to ensure peace or prevent war. The American experiment has always been about live and let live. It's true diversity, not a fake kind, but the tools that we use to protect that diversity, that melting pot, have been poisoned, and that leads to why the Jews are hated. The Jews are hated because they are cohesive. They stick together as we tear each other apart. That's why they hate Israel, because the oppressor versus oppressed mindset cannot penetrate a pluralistic success that remains cohesive. Sound familiar? That's America. So you're free to protest all you want, but it is interesting that you aren't protesting the Ukraine war. Hundreds of thousands are already dead in collective punishment, a collective punishment that we are paying for. Why doesn't that matter? Because it doesn't fit the oppressed versus oppressor filter.
Wait, what?
Code Pink literally is doing that. I mean, and then it's a different type of thing because Russia's the aggressor in that conflict.
Yes.
I'm unclear. What is the collective punishment that we're paying for there?
I think he's saying our continued support of Ukraine is leading to conditions where civilians are dying.
Goo goo gaga stuff. I mean, we're funding, there's valid critiques of that, but we're funding the party that was invaded, defense elements there. And yeah, I mean, that's...
there are people who have been protesting.
Exactly. I don't remember Greg Gutfeld being like, look at Code Pink here, unless it was like because Marjorie Taylor Greene got a sort of photo op they had to distance themselves from.
It is odd, too, and I just want to say that within the first week or week and a half of Israel's bombardment of Gaza, more children were killed in Gaza than have been in the entirety of this war in Ukraine.
More bombs were dropped, I think, in about 1 week in Israel than we saw in the entire Ukraine conflict, I think.
In the first year of our invasion of Afghanistan.
That's what it was.
I think I saw Noah Cohen pulled out, we've passed the initial invasion of Iraq for civilian casualties. Who knows, but...
I mean, they're so highly concentrated, it's not difficult.
Exactly. It's a different type of operation being going on than our invasion of Iraq than the just shelling of Gaza.
Which is why perhaps Israel-Hamas war is not the correct way to frame what's happening here.
Sound familiar? That's America. So you're free to protest all you want, but it is interesting that you aren't protesting the Ukraine war. Hundreds of thousands are already dead in collective punishment, a collective punishment that we are paying for. Why doesn't that matter?
I'll just say real quick, Ian Bremmer, some blowhard consultant guy on Twitter said, why isn't the DSA talking about Yemen? And it's like the DSA has a whole page and has done multiple different events on Yemen. But go ahead.
That you aren't protesting the Ukraine war. Hundreds of thousands are already dead in collective punishment, a collective punishment that we are paying for. Why doesn't that matter? Because it doesn't fit the oppressed versus oppressor filter based on pigment. The white on white war doesn't matter. So this isn't even about people. This is about division and creating hate from within.
So it's the Jewish race factor and the power factor.
Perhaps.
Dana.
One comment on
wait, pause it. You know why he says perhaps? It's because he doesn't even know what he just said. And so he doesn't know what the question is. And he doesn't even know, he was just there to deliver that, really, honestly, it was so purpley prose for television. I couldn't even, he certainly couldn't follow it. And the reason why he couldn't answer Jesse Waters' dumbass question is because he didn't even know what he just said.
He started saying that the concept of collective punishment is not really a thing, and then said there's collective punishment happening in Ukraine.
And I'm not even understanding, by whom?
Well,
who is punishing whom?
He's flattening. He's saying collective punishment, whatever. Just disperse with that notion. It's not even a real thing. Any death in war can be constituted as collective punishment, which is just a child thinks this way, or somebody who has never had access to the internet where they could Google the term collective punishment.
Go back just before Jesse Waters asked. This is my favorite thing: is that you've delivered this 3-page diatribe that you don't know what it means. You get asked one simple question by the brainiac Jesse Waters, and you have so little clue as what you just said that you just maybe. Go back.
Filter based on pigment. The white-on-white war doesn't matter. So this isn't even about people. This is about division and creating hate from within.
So it's the Jewish race factor and the power factor.
Perhaps.
Dana.
One comment on the media.
How do you have such a monologue where you're trying to be decisive and opinionated and then just go perhaps?
He had no idea what he was talking about. Literally no idea what he was talking
It's
about.
like his brain was on a skillet.
Yeah.
He
just
perhaps
the neurons had stopped firing.
It's actually
after
brilliant.
delivery.
It's a brilliant response, because if you said maybe, you'd sound like an idiot. But if you say perhaps,
yeah,
then you're.
It's like you fill in the blanks.
I'm not here to. I report. You decide. That's
Gutfeld's way.
That was super impressive.
Wow,
Should we just do the Crowder thing? I feel like we got it. We run a little
triple
bit late.
threat of morons.
Yeah, we can.
All right, let's do this, because this is where Steven Crowder does his Sam Harris impersonation, but it's sort of late. This is like bringing back, we're not in the we're no longer in that era of the early teens where we were having a war of civilizations that we were told we were having to justify our slaughtering hundreds of thousands, if not more, in Iraq. And this is also done in a backdrop of a supposed peace accord that was being negotiated with pretty significant elements of the Muslim world. Saudi Arabia is not exactly a secular regime. But here is Crowder, because just sort of going back to the oldies.
Oh, this is what he does, right? He just goes to the most racist colonel at the core. Okay.
This is where I think people are misinterpreting the Israel-Hamas conflict, Israel-Palestine conflict. And I've heard people say that it's weapons manufacturers that are owned by Jews who want this war. And by the way, I get it that the military-industrial complex, there are people who profit from war. To believe that the Israeli government allowed 1,400 people to be killed so that they could give out another weapon, to me is, okay. No, it does. It does start with the eradication of Jews from Islam. And by the way, Christians are next. Like you just said, the dimitude goes away because you've had your time. If you haven't converted, you're like, good news. The poll tax is now going to zero today. Oh, wow, great. The bad news is you're going to be burned alive and thrown from a rooftop. So, let me give you two different situations.
Wait, is there a significant Italian contingency involved in this conflict?
Mamma mia, it's a holy war.
Sheikh El Mario.
I'm just... That's funny.
All right, go back here. What does he say?
I just want to say, though, quickly, just Googled Steven Crowder anti-Semitism. This is a quote from him last year. Is there a disproportionate number of people with Jewish last names in higher banking? That's an argument that can be made.
Crowder has a difficult issue to deal with from a brand standpoint, which is that his very first video was Obama doesn't love Israel enough. And yet, nonetheless, he's cultivated an audience of virulent anti-Semites who shared all those memes of here's every Jew in any sort of a position of authority. So trying to square that circle, it takes a real broadcaster.
Oh, there's an easy way to square it.
That's why he brought up the Christians.
We just need the Jews so that they can be assembled and brought back to Israel to bring about the second coming. That's basically the undertones of that. But go ahead.
Oh, wow, great. The bad news is you're going to be burned alive and thrown from a rooftop. So, let me give you two different situations, and this will give you a different idea of conflict. There is battles for land take place, resources. Right. That's why I always say when people say, oh, what, just because you've been banned from speaking publicly? Well, people have fought wars for less. That's your livelihood. Only a lot of us don't have territory like we used to as an agrarian society. You have spot of digital land. So when it's taken away from you, your ability to speak, your ability to make a living online, wars have been fought for less. I understand that. And that doesn't necessarily indicate a battle of good and evil. Sometimes people just need resources because they need to live. It would be like coming home. You come home, your house is ransacked. Okay? Your television's gone, computers, jewelry, all of that. And you make your way up to the bedroom and someone's still there. And you see that it's a scared, poor kid. Still could have made better decisions, right? There are other options. I'm not giving him a pass, but you see that he's scared and he has maybe a handful of your jewelry. He looks at you and says, if you just, and jumps out the window and he runs away. Okay, he takes your crap, he runs away. All right, that's different. You're probably not going to chase him down and kill him. Now, let's contrast that. You come home. This is the kind of conflict we're dealing with. You come home, your house has been ransacked. You walk up to your bedroom and at gunpoint, he ties you down to a chair and says, I'm going to come back when your whole family is here and kill all of them.
Pause it for
Remember
1 second.
me.
Now, up until that moment, he's literally describing what's been going on in the West Bank with Israeli soldiers.
You can see
and
videos.
Settlers.
Yeah.
You can see these videos. We played some. Where Israeli soldiers and settlers are going in and taking these homes and basically saying, there's nothing you can do about it. And if you don't leave, we're going to kill you. In fact, I think we even have a story from the BBC, or is it Channel 4, where they're reporting on a guy, I don't know, he looks to be like maybe 50s, 60s, maybe 60s-year-old, having to basically pack up his family because settlers from the illegal settlements are firing at them, and he's got to move to just like down the road and leave a home that his family's been living in generations. But I have a feeling that's not what Crowder's doing here. Go ahead.
Your bedroom, and at gunpoint, he ties you down to a chair and says, I'm going to come back when your whole family is here and kill all of them. Remember me. I'm never going to stop until everyone in this house is dead. You deal with those two people very differently. Yeah. And one is an accurate depiction of how these Islamists believe they are to live, how they are called to act by God. It's, I'm coming back and killing every last one of you in the Lipschitz household. Then, when I'm done with that, I'm going down to the McDonald's down the street. I'm going to their household because they're Christians. Once we're done with all of the Jews, Christians next. Because it is a worldview, a religion of global. When people talk about the doomsday cults of Christians, and they're stupid,
right? Yeah,
where they're trying to invite doomsday, they'll even talk about that with Israel, right? They'll talk because of the Messiah. Do you realize that all of Islam is a doomsday cult? That really we're only going to reach the end when every single Muslim is converting every person on earth? You need to constantly struggle for a global caliphate?
It's a hysterical person.
And maybe not everyone does that.
Pause it.
But 100.
Will you pull up the story we have of that Muslim country that is attacking the Christian country for the forced?
Yeah.
What about over the past 30 or 40 years? Like, I mean, this is the same garbage that we were hearing in the early teens to justify the war on terror. And the fact of the matter is, there are fights over resources. And in his scenario, yes, the people whose parents lived in that house have come back and said, we want this house back.
Yeah. But like, which side is Christians have been? There's been Christian churches bombed in this conflict by Israel. Like the sort of deployment of religious. Like you look at here's a clip or a section from. No, let's just keep playing this clip.
Well, yeah, I mean, just a reminder: 1.8 billion Muslims in the world that he's painting with this broad brush.
198 Muslims in the world think it's okay to sometimes kill civilians, and at least 54 million Muslims, according to these polls from Pew Research, say it's okay to kill civilians most of the time. You deal with that very differently than a pickpocket. So let me ask you where you see this go.
Pause just real quick. You can't talk about actual like a nation state here. We have to always translate it down to like an intruder or a pickpocket or something like that. Like this is again infantile.
How you see this ending? And again, I would love to hear if there's an exception. Brian says Jordan. I think he's wrong.
I think that the biggest challenge for Islam has always been can you actually have separation of church and state? it is not
No.
compatible.
No, it's not prescribed
It's
in
a
there.
blueprint for how to run your entire society.
It's a theocracy. It's absolutely
that's
set up
right.
as a theocracy.
Pause it.
It's not set up-
Incidentally, I just want to be clear. Israel is literally a Jewish state. Like there is but it's an Arab problem. I mean, I don't even know what to say. Like,
Netanyahu invoked the Bible to justify the mass killing. We just covered that yesterday. But if you're white passing in the way that Crowder views of it through a Western lens, and whiteness is ever changing, I understand that. But from a racist perspective of Crowder, like that, you're reasonable as opposed to a savage, right? So one is reasonable and the other is non-secular and and barbaric, and you can't deal with it. Like
Because Crowder's never actually gave a shit about being secular.
Of course.
And again, a reminder, there was almost an exclusively secular leadership of the Palestinian people decades ago, until the Israeli government realized that the best way to inhibit Palestinian political power was to create a religious-based competition for power against Fatah and the PLO, and ultimately the Palestinian Authority. I mean, it's by design. It's by design. All right. I think we've run out of time, ladies and gentlemen. That ends the call-in portion of our program. And Crowder's wife took half his hairline in the divorce. Let's see here. We go. All right. 5 more IMs. Militant apathy. Doesn't it only work against Democrats of Michigan if Republicans take out a pro-Palestinian position? What Republicans are doing that?
No.
Well, no, because it's people
Depressing
stay home.
turnout. Yeah.
New speaker's wife runs Onward Christian Counseling. Google that shit. Serious Revelations vibe with that dude. I swear I thought this caller said ballet shoes. Bro from South Dakota. I cannot believe I'm defending Trump, but that Sioux Falls, Sioux City mix-up is not that big of a deal. Bernie did it when he was in Sioux Falls. Ad hominem. Sam, can we please get a copy of your best show debut show to listen somewhere? Yeah, we should. I got to figure out how to put out stuff like that as a members bonus. 502 Drew, do you have a holster, a couple of guns, and a thong? Easy Steven Crowder costume. The thong is Steven's secret. All right, 2 more. Giga Chad Chess Bro. I'm no fan of term limits, but maybe 20, 25 years to allow the next generation to have a shot. I'm inclined to agree with that. And the final IM of the day. Train Boy, given Ronnie Meatball's hatred of the Communist Party of China, I'm not surprised he's trying to bring back foot binding.
Oh, gosh.
Bradley, Emma, great job today. See you folks tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive